Morning, boys, girls, everybody. All right, new week, new price action. So today we're watching the Tucker Carlson interview of Vladimir Putin. I'm excited about that. I haven't. I've heard a couple things, but yeah, not too much. I heard there was some pushback on the Washington Post journalist being held in captivity. So yeah, I mean we'll see. Obviously, big news type of thing. I always like to watch for myself. Before we jump into that, let me just talk a little bit about the markets here. So we're gonna do some cross market analysis. I mean, I think starting with crypto because obviously super bullish. If we want to zoom back out onto the monthly chart, you can see this is your price action back in 2021, slightly higher high. We're getting up here, but also keep in mind that as far as like a big short, not a big short, but we are hitting that OTE short entry zone. And truthfully, I am looking for something like a short from here down to take out these lows into this, but maybe not. Maybe it holds in here in like the 28. I am looking for something like that potential as a possibility. Not today, obviously, but into the spring, and then bottom summer doldrums we kind of start grinding, and then August we start to get bullish again. With that said, it's like not gonna happen today, but all of that is to say that there's a good potential for this weekly candle, which is starting off red right now, to put in a local weekly top. All right, coming back to the daily here, you will see that ETH made a lower high on the daily. Well, so far, I mean, right now it's taken out the lows of yesterday's daily, but it's all weekend price action. You can't say too much about it. Bitcoin took out the high yesterday of the day before, so that's a little divergence between the two of them. So that's good to know. Going over to the dollar, because that's going to be an important one too. So this is another one. This looks similar to the Bitcoin candle on Euro. And you can see Dixie kind of took out those lows, and now it's popped back up. Yeah, I mean, this looks bullish on the Dixie on the daily here. I'm just going back up to the weekly. Yeah, I mean, green weekly last week. We did take out the weekly low this week, but we're green right now. And so I think, yeah, right now we're kind of looking at the dollar being potentially bullish, but not too crazy. It's pretty much in the middle of the range here. All right, so this is what I want to look at next. I want to look at time of day analysis. So we got a 15-minute chart on, and today's the 12th. So here's the midnight open on this candle. So you can see it opened here. It pushed up above. This is your top, 245. So your London kill zone, that's your fake out in London. Right up there and down. So potentially has some high of the day on the Euro potential. Obviously you see it mirrored here in Dixie. Let's take a look at Bitcoin as well on the 15-minute. And there's your midnight. So similarly, push up. Actually, this is ETH that I'm looking at here. Let's look at the Bitcoin. Same thing. Midnight. Oh, that's noon. That's not midnight. Okay, so here's midnight's here. Not that interesting. Here's a fake out. High of the session, and now we've taken out that low. So, yeah, I mean, with this the way it is right now, we don't really have like a high or low of the day to be playing off of here. Generally speaking, we are kind of hanging up here in the middle of nowhere, which, leads me to potentially think a pullback into this area could happen. But of course, super bullish right now that it could just keep pushing. But we'll monitor that. It might not be, like, so far I haven't really seen any kind of structure to suggest that there's going to be trades this morning worth taking. Let's go to NASDAQ. So, starting with the daily, obviously we're coming off a big green daily on Friday. So, when we think about the weekly and the wick on the weekly, I mean, do we just open up, put the wick in at the top, and then turn red? Not sure. In any case, no range yet to really be too concerned with. Let's going back into the 15 here. Okay, so we got that sell side last week as predicted. Didn't trade it properly, but that's what we're learning. All right, so 15-minute chart. It's 5 a.m. This is your midnight down. That's your kind of kill zone entry. So you can see on ETH there's a little bit more structure to this. Bitcoin's very tight. This is the same on Bitcoin, right? Yeah, so this is your kind of kill zone here. But again, you went both directions, took out. This is very, very much a tight little range, and we really want to see it break to one side or the other. Potentially to fake out down and then go higher, because we are still bullish. Like, definitely don't want to be trying to call a top yet. So I think that's what we're looking for right now. We want to maybe take out these lows. And then potentially push, but it also could come all the way down here. So we're going to look at our 830 turning point again as well as an important kind of aspect of this. And we'll start to see what liquidity we're taking, what liquidity we're leaving, and we'll go from there. So that's the plan. I don't know if we're going to take any trades today because, again, the market is not looking like it's going to do very much. Probably going to be pretty sideways today. It is a Monday. But with that, I think let's jump into this Tucker Carlson. We can, hang out for a couple hours. That's why we're watching. We don't want to feel too compelled to trade, right? All right. Let's get it.
The following is an interview with the...
I do want to put my headphones on because wifey's sleeping still. Oops, turned them off. Thought they were off.
The following is an interview with the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, shot February 6, 2024 at about 7 p.m. in the building behind us, which is, of course, the Kremlin. The interview, as you will see if you watch it, is primarily about the war in progress, the war in Ukraine, how it started, what's happening, and most pressingly, how it might end. One note before you watch. At the beginning of the interview, we asked the most obvious question, which is, why did you do this? Did you feel a threat, an imminent physical threat? And that's your justification. And the answer we got shocked us. Putin went on for a very long time, probably half an hour, about the history of Russia going back to the 8th century. And honestly, we thought this was a filibustering technique and found it annoying and interrupted him several times. And he responded he was annoyed by the interruption. But we concluded in the end, for what it's worth, that it was not a filibustering technique. There was no time limit on the interview. We ended it after more than 2 hours. Instead, what you're about to see seemed to us sincere, whether you agree with it or not. Vladimir Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of western Ukraine. So our opinion would be to view it in that light, as a sincere expression of what he thinks. And with that,
Yeah, I don't know about all that.
Mr. President, thank you.
I'm not assuming anything
On
sincere from
February 22nd, 2022, you addressed your country in a nationwide address when the conflict in Ukraine started. And you said that you were acting because you had come to the conclusion that the United States, through NATO, might initiate a, quote, surprise attack on our country. And to American ears, that sounds paranoid. Tell us why you believe the United States might strike Russia out of the blue. How did you conclude that?
Да, дело не в том, что Америка.
Why isn't Putin speaking English? He speaks English. He speaks good English, as far as I know, doesn't he? Why isn't he speaking English? Yeah, I don't like that. He should speak English if he knows how.
It's not that America, the United States, was going to launch a surprise strike on Russia. I didn't say that. Are we having a talk show or a serious conversation?
Really?
Here's the quote. Thank you. It's a formidable series.
Так вот,
Come
да,
on,
это
Putin.
серьезный разговор.
Let's hear the
Но
quote.
поскольку у вас базовое
Because your
образование,
basic education is in history, as far as I understand.
Yes.
тогда я позволю себе
So if you don't mind, I will take only 30 seconds or 1 minute to give you a short reference to history
Is it
for
gonna
giving
be
you
1
a
minute?
little historical background.
Please.
Вот смотрите, с чего начались
Let's look
наши
where our
отношения.
relationship with Ukraine started from.
Откуда она взялась?
Where did Ukraine come from?
Российское государство стало
The
собираться
Russian state started gathering itself as a centralized statehood,
годом создания российского
and
государства,
it is considered to be the year of the establishment of the Russian state in 862,
Новгород на северо-западе страны.
when the townspeople of Novgorod invited a Varangian prince, Rurik, from Scandinavia to reign.
Варяг. 1800.
This is what he's
In
talking about
1862,
right now.
Russia celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its statehood,
Своей государственности в Новгороде.
and in Novgorod there is a memorial dedicated to the 1000th anniversary of the
В
country.
1882 году.
In 882, Rurik's successor, Prince Oleg, who was actually playing the role of regent at Rurik's younger son,
По сути, функция регента
because Rurik had died by that time, came to Kiev.
к этому времени пришел в Киев, отстранил от власти двух братьев,
He ousted two brothers who apparently had
членами дружины Рюрика,
once been members of Rurik's squad.
имея два центра в Киеве и в Новгороде.
So Russia began to develop with two centers of power, Kiev and Novgorod.
Следующая очень значимая дата в истории
The
России.
next very significant date in the history of Russia was 988.
That's a city in
Владимир
Russia.
это
This was the baptism of Russia,
Рюрика,
when
крестил
Prince Vladimir, the great-grandson of Rurik, baptized Russia and adopted Orthodoxy, or Eastern Christianity.
централизованное российское государство.
From this time, the centralized Russian state began to strengthen.
Единая территория,
Why?
единое
Because of the single territory, integrated economic ties,
один язык.
one and the same language, and, after the baptism of Russia, the same faith and rule of the prince. The centralized Russian state began to take shape.
Российское государство.
Back in the Middle Ages, Prince Yaroslav the Wise introduced the order of succession to a throne,
На введение престола наследия
but after he passed away, it became complicated for various reasons.
чуть-чуть попозже, после того, как он ушел
Alright,
из жизни.
The
Престол
throne was
наследия
passed
So,
not
wanna
directly
check?
from
Alright,
father
buddy.
to eldest son, but
You
from the
make
prince
Russia-
who
you
had
make
passed away
American
to his
answer for
brother,
supporting Ukraine.
then to his sons
Yeah.
in different lines.
потом сыновьям по разным линиям. Все это привело к
All this led to the fragmentation and the end of Rus as a single state.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
There was
I-
nothing
you know,
special
I
about
don't know
it.
how I feel
The
about
same was
Ukraine
happening then in
and,
Europe.
Но
our support for
раздробленное
Ukraine, but
русское государство
I
стало
also-
легкой
I
добычей.
think it's very
But the
fair to
fragmented
acknowledge
Russian state became an
that
easy
being
prey to the
today,
empire created earlier by
the
Genghis Khan.
tanks are going in one direction
пришли на
into the
Русь,
Ukraine.
His successors, namely Batu Khan, came to Rus, plundered and ruined nearly all the cities. The southern part, including Kiev, by the way, and some other cities, simply lost independence, while northern cities preserved some of their sovereignty. They had to pay tribute to the horde, but they managed to preserve some part of their sovereignty. And then a unified Russian state began to take shape with its center in Moscow. The southern part of Russian lands, including Kiev, began to gradually gravitate towards another magnet, the center that was emerging in Europe. This was the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. It was even called the Lithuanian-Russian Duchy, because Russians were a significant part of this population. They spoke the old Russian language and were Orthodox. But then there was a unification, the union of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland. A few years later, another union was signed, but this time already in the religious sphere.
All right, so he's giving some background, kind of explaining how historically Ukraine and Russia work together. There's these two different centers in Kiev and Moscow that start to kind of build alliances in different directions. Just wanted to pause just to take a look at this price action because we are looking like on the 15 minute, which is a low time frame reversal. At least take out these equal lows here. I think this should definitely be some sell side to keep an eye on right now. So we're gonna mark that off. Yeah. And of course we've got buy set up there, so. So yeah, we are looking for something taking out these lows, I think. I'll wind up to do that even, like candle we just had. But yeah, we'll keep going here.
Some of the Orthodox priests became subordinate to the Pope. Thus, these lands became part of the Polish-Lithuanian state. During decades, the Poles were engaged in Polonization of this part of the population. They introduced their language there, tried to entrench the idea that this population was not exactly Russians, that because they lived on the fringe, they were Ukrainians. Originally, the word Ukrainian meant that a person was living on the outskirts of the state, along the fringes, or was engaged in a border patrol service. It didn't mean any particular ethnic group. So the Poles were trying to,
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
in every possible way, to colonize this part of the Russian lands, and actually treated it rather harshly, not to say cruelly. All that led to the fact that this part of the Russian lands began to struggle for their rights. They wrote letters to Warsaw demanding that their rights be observed and people be commissioned here, including to Kiev.
I beg your pardon, can you tell us what period, I'm losing track of where in history we are, the Polish oppression of Ukraine?
It was in the 13th century. Now I will tell you what happened later and give the dates so that there is no confusion. And in 1654, even a bit earlier,
люди, которые контролировали
The
власть.
people
think
who
Ned's
were in
gonna run for
control
these
of
eyes
the
like right
authority
now?
over that part of the Russian lands
They're in the kill zone.
addressed Warsaw, I repeat, demanding that they send them to rulers of Russian origin and Orthodox faith. When Warsaw did not answer them, and in fact rejected their demands, they turned to Moscow, so that Moscow took them away.
Чтобы вы не думали, что я что-то придумал, Дим.
So that
So what I'm thinking here, we have this at the 15-minute. This is your kill zone. Thinking we might have a nice trade of, if anything, on Forex today. So I would probably, if we do come down, I probably will try and pick something up down here. Maybe in this gap, like around 104. But obviously on a short on euro, so look for it to come up here and take that short probably. I think I am looking for that today. That's a possibility.
you don't think that I'm inventing things. I'll give you these documents.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're inventing it. I'm not sure why it's relevant to what happened 2 years
Не-не-не,
ago.
но все-таки
But still,
документы из архива.
these are documents from the archives, copies.
Здесь письма Богдана
Here are the letters from Bogdan Khmelnytsky,
контролировал власть в этой
the man who then controlled the power in this part of the Russian lands
в Варшаву.
that is now called Ukraine.
А после того, как
He wrote to Warsaw demanding that their rights be upheld,
с просьбой взять их,
and after being refused, he began to write letters to Moscow, asking to take them under the strong hand of the Moscow Tsar. There are copies of these documents. I will leave them for your good memory. There is a translation into Russian. You can translate it into English later.
потому что
Russia would not agree to admit them straight away, assuming that the war with Poland would start. Nevertheless, in 1654, the Pan-Russian Assembly of top clergy and landowners, headed by the Tsar,
часть древнерусских земель вошла
which was the representative body of the power of the old Russian state, decided to include a part of the old Russian lands into Moscow Kingdom.
перемирие было заключено.
As expected, the war with Poland began.
Этого
It lasted 13 years, and then in 1654,
по-моему, 2
a truce was concluded.
мир с Польшей. Вечный мир, как это было.
And 32 years later, I think, a peace treaty with Poland, which they called Eternal Peace, was signed.
Отошла к России.
And these lands, the whole left bank of Dnieper, including Kiev, went to Russia.
Затем во времена
And the whole right bank of Dnieper remained in
Россия
Poland.
вернула все исторические земли.
Under the rule of Catherine the Great, Russia reclaimed all of its historical lands, including in the south and west.
Да, а вот
This all lasted until the revolution.
воспользовавшись
Before World War I,
украинизацией,
Austrian General Staff relied on the ideas of Ukrainianization and started actively promoting the ideas of Ukraine and the Ukrainianization.
в преддверии мировой войны, конечно, было стремление ослабить потенциал.
Their motive was obvious.
Было стремление
Just before World War I, they wanted to weaken the potential enemy and secure themselves favorable conditions in the border area.
люди,
So the idea which had emerged in Poland that people residing in that territory were allegedly not really Russians, but rather belonged to a special ethnic group, Ukrainians, started being propagated by the Austrian General Staff.
которые говорили необходимо
As far back as the 19th century, theorists calling for Ukrainian independence appeared.
украинской независимости, говорили,
All those, however, claimed that Ukraine should have a very
Yawn,
good
bro.
relationship
Come
with
on,
Russia.
let's get some talk to me, bro.
They insisted on that.
после
I
революции
understand why Tucker is
1917
yawning.
года
After
But
the
it's a serious
1917
interview.
revolution,
He's trying to
старались
listen,
восстановить,
but I don't have to listen. I can skip this shit if I want
the
to.
Bolsheviks sought to restore the statehood and the civil war began, including the hostilities with Poland.
в Польше в 1921 году.
So he's basically saying that they're not
по которым
ethnically.
западные
There's no
In
ethnic
1921,
Ukraine. It's
peace with Poland was
Ukraine is
proclaimed,
Russia.
and under that treaty, the right bank of Dnieper River once again was given back to Poland.
В 1939
In 1939, after Poland cooperated with Hitler,
начала с Гитлером, а Польша сотрудничала.
It did collaborate with Hitler, you know? Hitler offered Poland peace and a treaty of friendship.
В архивах есть. Предлагал
They collaborated.
An
with the
alliance demanding in
Surrender.
return that Poland give back to Germany the so-called Danzig corridor, which connected the bulk of Germany with East Prussia and Königsberg.
основную часть Германии с
Come
Кёнигсбергом
on, Putin, give me something.
и с Восточной Пруссией.
After World War I, this territory was transferred to Poland, and instead of Danzig, a city of Dansk emerged.
И вместо
That was boring.
Данцига
So
появилась
charts are boring.
Hitler asked them to give
It
it
was boring.
amicably, but they refused.
Of course.
Still, they collaborated with Hitler and engaged together
Сотрудничали с Гитлером и вместе занялись
in the
разделом
partitioning of Czechoslovakia.
But may I ask you, you're making the case that Ukraine, certainly parts of Ukraine, eastern Ukraine, is in effect Russia, has been for
Yeah.
hundreds of years. Why wouldn't you just take it when you became president 24 years ago? You have nuclear weapons, they don't. If it's actually your land, why did you wait so long?
Ща- Да, сейчас
I'll tell you,
я щас к этому-
I'm
я
coming to
заканчиваю.
that.
То есть,
Well, Russia.
this briefing is coming to an end. It might
I mean, Ukraine did have, in his defense to that question, I mean, Ukraine had a puppet Russian government for a long time, up until 2014, when the U.S. pretty much staged a coup.
be boring, but it
It's not
explains
boring.
many
I
things.
just don't know how it's relevant.
Ну, отлично, тогда мне очень
Good.
приятно, что вы так это оценили.
Good.
Спасибо большое.
I'm so
Peter.
glad
Yeah, I mean, he understands Tucker. Tucker's speaking in English, and he's just speaking Russian and getting it translated. But he understands Tucker in English. He's not getting a translation. He's responding instantly.
gratified that you appreciate that.
После,
Thank you.
перед Второй мировой
So,
войной,
before
когда
World
Польша
War
была
II,
уже
Poland
уже
collaborated with Hitler, and although it did not yield to Hitler's demands, it still participated in the partitioning of Czechoslovakia together with Hitler, as the Poles had not given the Danzig corridor to Germany and went too far, pushing Hitler to start World War II by attacking. Why was it Poland against whom the war started on 1st September 1939?
его планов.
Poland turned out to be uncompromising, and Hitler had nothing to do but start implementing his plans with Poland.
И Советский Союз
By the way, the USSR, I have read some archive documents, behaved very honestly.
свои войска на помощь Чехословакии.
It asked Poland's permission to transit its troops through the Polish territory to help Czechoslovakia.
Что если даже советские
But
самолеты
the then Polish foreign minister said that if the Soviet planes flew over Poland, they would be downed
Oh, looks
over
like
the
we're about
territory
to-
of Poland.
Get a little action here.
But that doesn't
It's
matter.
at 8:30.
What
Uh-oh,
matters
are we
is
gonna
that
have
the
a
war
dump for the
began,
pump?
and Poland
I
fell
can't
prey
miss
to
it.
the
On
policies
Friday, if you guys saw
it
I
had
took a-
pursued against
I was
Czechoslovakia
lining up trying to
as
take a
under
trade
the
and
well-known
didn't click the button
Molotov-Ribbentrop
fast enough.
Pact.
But today I'm gonna
Part
make
of the
sure
territory,
you guys,
including Western
unfortunately, do not get
Ukraine,
the best entries. I'm gonna
was to
getting
be
my
given to
entries on
Russia.
My private account
Thus,
first,
Russia,
and then-
which was
and
then
then in
named
here.
as USSR, regained its historical
But we're
lands.
looking for
After the victory
a
in
run
the
of
Great
these
Patriotic
loads
War,
into
as we call
8:30,
World War II,
and then
территории
buy to take it
окончательно
higher.
были закрыты.
all those territories were ultimately enshrined as belonging to Russia,
Польша
to the USSR.
при этой компенсации, так надо полагать.
As for
получила
Poland,
Запад,
it received, apparently in compensation, the lands which had originally been German.
это, вот западная, восточную часть,
The eastern parts of Germany,
часть земли.
these are now western lands of Poland.
Сегодня. Ну, естественно, и опять вернули.
Of course, Poland regained access to the Baltic Sea and Danzig,
Вернули Данциг, который опять стал.
which was once again given its Polish name.
Вот таким образом сложилось.
So this was how this situation
При
developed.
формировании Советского Союза, это уже 1900
In 1922, when the USSR was being established,
большевики начали формировать
the
СССР.
Bolsheviks started building the USSR and established the Soviet Ukraine, which had never existed before.
Right.
Который до сих пор вообще не существовал. При этом Сталин
Stalin insisted that those republics be included in the USSR as
входили в качестве автономных образований.
autonomous entities.
Основатель советского государства Ленин стоял.
For some inexplicable reason, Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, insisted that they be entitled to withdraw from the USSR.
Наделил образующуюся.
Again, for some
Viewers,
unknown
appreciate
reasons,
ya.
he
How you
transferred
doing?
to that newly established Soviet Republic of Ukraine some of the lands together with
Twitch,
people living
got
there,
one on YouTube.
even though those lands had never been called Ukraine. And yet,
Social
they were made
checker,
part
you
of
still
that
watching,
Soviet
buddy?
Republic of Ukraine. Those lands included the Black Sea region, which was received under Catherine the Great, and which had no historical connection with Ukraine whatsoever. Even if we go as far back as 1654, when these lands returned to Russian Empire, that territory was the size of 3 to 4 regions of modern Ukraine, with no Black Sea region. That was completely out of the question.
In 1654.
Exactly.
You obviously have encyclopedic knowledge of this region, but why didn't you make this case for the first 22 years as president that Ukraine wasn't a real country?
Да. Итак, значит, Советская Украина получила
The Soviet Union was given a great deal of territory that had never belonged to it, including the Black Sea region.
когда Россия их получила в результате
At some point, when Russia received them as an outcome of the Russo-Turkish Wars, they were called New Russia or Novorossiya. But that does not matter. What matters is that Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state,
И вот это все
established Ukraine that way.
в составе СССР
For decades, the Ukrainian Soviet Republic developed as
Yeah.
part of the USSR.
по непонятным причинам занимались.
And for unknown reasons, again, the Bolsheviks were engaged in
Alright, so not allowed to share this stuff on stream, but yeah. ICT does not see anything worth trading. Yes, like me. I didn't see anything worth trading either. I told you guys as much. The market is going to loosen up before I trade it. Okay. Oh man, what do you guys think of the Super Bowl last night, huh? Oh man. Narrow win. Yeah, I didn't stay up. I didn't watch. I stayed up, but I didn't watch like the second half and the overtime. Pretty amazed that just given what I did see in the first half and into like the early second half, which actually I didn't really stay for the second half at all. San Francisco's defense looked really strong. Special teams looked really strong. Obviously, it was a barn burner until the end, overtime, etc. But he's saying it's rigged, which I don't really see the incentive to rig it. You know, he's talking about the gambling operation, but you can make hand over fist money running a gambling operation without frigging anything. All you do is you just take the spread. There were some bad calls though. I mean, at least but I saw a spot that was really, really bad spot. That was Chiefs though, wasn't it? He's glad he doesn't have a daughter that watches Taylor Swift or boys that watch the NFL.
Ukrainianization. It was not merely because the Soviet leadership was composed to a great extent of those originating from Ukraine. Rather, it was explained by the general policy of indigenization pursued by the Soviet Union. Same things were done in other Soviet republics. This involved promoting national languages and national cultures, which is not a bad in principle. That is how the Soviet Ukraine was created. After the World War II, Ukraine received, in addition to the lands that had belonged to Poland before the war, part of the lands that had previously belonged to Hungary and Romania. So Romania and Hungary had some of their lands taken away and given to the Soviet Ukraine, and they still remain part of Ukraine. So in this sense, we have every reason to affirm that Ukraine is an artificial state that was shaped at Stalin's will.
Do you believe Hungary has a right to take its land back from Ukraine and that other nations have a right to go back to their 1654 borders?
That's a good question.
Ну, я не знаю, как границам.
I'm not sure whether they should go back to the 1654 borders.
Все считают, что
But
That's
given
a good
Stalin's
question,
time,
dude.
so-called Stalin's regime, which as many claim saw numerous violations of human rights and violations of the rights of other states,
государств, то в этом смысле, конечно, вполне можно, ну,
Come on.
если не говорить о том,
What
что
you
они
got
имеют
for
на
me,
это
buddy?
право.
one may say that they could claim back those lands of theirs while having no right to do that. It is at least understandable.
Have you told Viktor Orban that he can have part of Ukraine?
Никогда не говорил.
Never. I've never told him, not a single time.
У нас с ним даже на этот счет не было никаких разговоров.
Oh, Jesus.
We have not even.
He's sassy today, dude. He's not effing around. He's like, so basically you're saying that Hungary is entitled to some Ukraine. Have you told the Hungarian president that he's entitled to some of Ukraine? Interesting. That's a funny question.
Even had any conversation on that, but I actually know for sure that Hungarians who live there
Alright.
Они, конечно, хотят вернуться на свою
I guess
территорию.
I'm
wanted
getting
to
some
get
entertainment out of
back
this
to their
after all.
historical land.
Интересную историю. Отвлекусь.
Moreover, I would like to share a very interesting story with you.
Значит, где-то в начале
I digress, it's a personal one.
What's happening?
Somewhere in the early
Yeah, it's
80s,
so dead.
I
Oh,
went
you
on
can't
a
actually
road
touch
trip
this
in a
side.
car from then Leningrad
Jesus, look at that.
across the Soviet Union through
America's
Kiev.
so dead, bro.
Made a stop in Kiev and then went to western Ukraine.
название города.
I went to the town of Beregovoye, and all the names of towns and villages there were in Russian and in a language I did not understand, in Hungarian, in Russian and in Hungarian, not in Ukrainian, in Russian and in Hungarian.
Are we gonna
I was
push
driving
up
through
here
some
for a
kind of
turning
village
point?
and there were men sitting next to the houses and they were wearing black three-piece suits and black cylinder hats. I asked, are they some kind of entertainers? I was told, no, they were not entertainers, they're Hungarians. I said, what are they doing here? What do you mean? This is their land, they live here. This was during the Soviet time in the 1980s. They preserved the Hungarian language, Hungarian names, and all their national costumes. They are Hungarians and they feel themselves to be Hungarians. And of course, when now there is an infringement,
Well, that is, and there's a lot of that, though. I think many nations are upset about Transylvania as well, as you obviously know. But many nations feel frustrated by the redrawn borders of the wars of the 20th century and wars going back 1,000 years, the ones that you mentioned. But the fact is that you didn't make this case in public until 2 years ago, February. And in the case that you made, which I read today,
Сейчас скажу.
you explain at great length that you felt a physical threat from the West in NATO, including potentially a nuclear threat, and that's what got you to move. Is that a fair characterization of what you said?
Я понимаю, что поскольку мои длинные диалоги, они
I understand that my long speeches probably fall outside of the genre of the interview. That is why I asked you at the beginning, are we going to have a serious talk or a show?
Так что не обижайтесь.
You said a serious talk,
Так вот,
so bear with me,
подошли
please.
к тому моменту, когда
We're coming to the point where the Soviet Ukraine was established.
1991 год
Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed,
получила в подарок от
and
России
everything that Russia had generously bestowed on Ukraine was dragged away by the latter.
Вот я
8:30 incoming.
I'm coming to a very
I don't know if we're
important
gonna do
point of
8:30 'cause,
today's agenda.
In the
Этот
range,
развал
no
Советского
range.
Союза.
Thank you.
After all, the collapse of the Soviet Union was effectively initiated by the Russian
Я не
leadership.
знаю, чем тогда руководствовалось руководство России. Но
I do not understand what the Russian leadership was guided by at the time, but I suspect there were several reasons to think everything would be fine.
первое. Ну, во-первых, я думаю, что руководство России исходило из того, что
First,
фундаментальные
I think that then Russian leadership
the turning
believed
point?
that the fundamentals of the relationship between Russia and
we're
Ukraine
going
were,
down. I think we're
in
going
fact,
down.
a common language.
Give me
More than
8:30.
90% of the population there spoke Russian.
у каждого третьего какие-то родственные связи.
Family ties. Every third person there had some kind of family or friendship ties. Common
Every third
culture,
person or
common
every
history.
person?
Finally, common faith,
said
coexistence with a
90%
single state for
speak
centuries,
Russian.
and deeply interconnected economies.
Экономика очень сильно взаимосвязана.
All of these were so fundamental. All these elements together make our good relationships inevitable.
Я хочу, чтобы вы, как американские граждане, чтобы
The second point is a
All right,
very
here we
important
go.
one.
8:30 time.
прежнее
8:30
российское
time.
руководство
I want
Ready
you,
for
as an
8:30
American
time.
citizen, and your viewers to hear about this as well.
больше никаких разделителей.
The former Russian leadership assumed that the Soviet Union had ceased to exist, and therefore there were no longer any ideological dividing lines.
Инициативно пошла даже на развал Советского Союза.
Russia even agreed voluntarily and proactively to the collapse of the Soviet
Так
Union,
называемым
and believed that this would be understood by the so-called civilized West as an invitation for cooperation and
вот чего
association.
ожидала Россия.
That is what Russia was expecting, both from the United States and the so-called collective West as a whole.
В том числе и в
Alright,
Германии.
it is
Эгон
8:30.
Барр,
There were smart people, including in Germany. Egon Bahr, a major politician of the
Wi-Fi is up. So let's see all the speakers. Huh. All right.
Social Democratic Party, who insisted in his personal conversations with the Soviet leadership on the
It is
brink of the
8:30.
collapse of the Soviet Union, that a new security system should be
Are we
established in
sending
Europe.
to the
помочь объединиться
downside
Германии.
here?
Но
Help should be given to unify Germany, but a
a
new system should be also established to include the United States, Canada, Russia, and other Central European countries.
Yes.
But NATO needs not to expand. That's what he said. If NATO expands, everything would be just the same as during the Cold War, only closer to Russia's borders. That's all.
Больше того, он рассердился как-то.
He was a wise old man, but no one listened to him. In fact, he got angry once.
Рассердился на советское руководство.
If, he said, you don't listen to me, I'm never setting my foot in Moscow once again.
Но, тем не менее,
Everything happened just as he had said.
Yeah, well, of course, it did come true, and
Yeah.
and you've mentioned this many times.
Well, I mean, it is a long history lesson here. A quarter of the interview almost already.
I think it's a fair point, and many in America thought that relations between Russia and the United States would be fine with the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, that the opposite happened.
All right.
But you've never explained why you think that happened, except to say that the West fears a strong Russia, but we have a strong China the West does not seem very afraid of. What about Russia do you think
China, but
convinced policymakers they had to take it down?
Запад
Okay.
боится сильного Китая больше, чем сильной России.
The West is afraid of strong China more than it fears a strong Russia.
yeah.
Because Russia has 150 million people and China has 1.5 billion population, and its economy is growing by leaps and bounds, or 5% a year. It used to be even more. But that's
China
enough
has
for
an extra
China.
Russia over
As Bismarck
1.5
once put it,
billion people.
potentials are the most important. China's potential is enormous.
all right,
It is the
all right,
biggest
all right,
economy
all
in the
right,
world
all right,
today
all right,
in terms of
all right,
purchasing
all right.
power parity and the size of the economy. It has already overtaken the United States quite a long time ago, and it is growing at a rapid clip. Let's not talk about who is afraid of whom. Let's not reason in such terms. And let's get into the fact that after 1991, when Russia expected that it would be welcomed into the brotherly family of civilized nations, nothing like this happened. You tricked us. I don't mean you personally when I say
Yeah, you are
Of course,
welcome.
I'm talking
As long
about
as
the
you
United
take
States.
the
The
dollar
promise was
hegemony
that
in the
NATO would
butthole,
not
buddy.
expand eastward, but it happened 5 times. There were 5 waves of expansion. We tolerated all that. We were trying to persuade them.
Well, just
We were
take that
saying,
dollar
please
hegemony,
don't.
buddy.
We are as bourgeois now as you are. We are market economy and there is no communist party power. let's negotiate. Moreover, I have also said this publicly before.
Был момент, когда
There was a moment when
когда серая кошка пробежала.
a certain rift started growing between us.
Помните, уступал?
Before that, Yeltsin came to the United States. Remember, he spoke in Congress and said the good words. God bless America. Everything he said were signals. Let us in. Remember the developments in Yugoslavia before the Yeltsin was lavished with praise? As soon as the developments in Yugoslavia started, he raised his voice in support of Serbs, and we couldn't but raise our voices for Serbs in their defense. I understand that there were complex processes underway there, I do, but Russia could not help raising its voice in support of Serbs, because Serbs are also a special and close to us nation, with Orthodox culture and so on. It's a nation that has suffered so much for generations. Well, regardless,
Okay, that's
what
also
is
pretty
important
back to
is
Dixon,
that
yeah.
Yeltsin expressed his
happening
support.
here?
What did the United States do? In violation of international law and the UN Charter, it started bombing Belgrade. It was the United States that let the genie out of the bottle. Moreover, when Russia protested and expressed its resentment, what was said? The UN Charter and international law have become obsolete. Now everyone invokes international law, but at that time they started saying that everything was outdated. Everything had to be changed. Indeed, some things need to be changed, as the balance of power has changed. It's true, but not in this manner. Yeltsin was immediately dragged through the mud, accused of alcoholism, of understanding nothing, of knowing nothing.
Ну хорошо.
He understood everything, I assure you. Well,
Думаю, ладно, все.
I became president in 2000. I thought, okay, the Yugoslav issue is over, but we should try to restore relations.
Которую Россия.
Sure. that's
Let's
what you
reopen
thought.
the
He
door
thought
that
he
Russia
just
had
tried to
tried to go
restore
through.
the
Больше того,
And
Soviet
moreover, I
Union.
said it publicly, I can reiterate.
в Кремле с уходящим от власти Белым
At a meeting here in the Kremlin with the outgoing President Bill Clinton, right here in the next room, I said to him,
А как ты
I
думаешь,
asked him,
если бы Россия поставила вопрос о вступлении в НАТО?
Bill, do you think if Russia asked to join NATO, do you think it would happen?
Вдруг он сказал, ты знаешь, это интересно.
Suddenly he said, you know, it's interesting. I think so.
Встретились.
Yeah,
Уже
right.
на
But
ужин.
in the evening, when we met for
Who
dinner,
would NATO,
he
who is
said,
NATO
you know,
there
I've
for?
talked to my team. No, it's not possible now.
Можете спросить у него. Но я думаю, наши...
You can ask him. I think he will watch our interview.
Я
He'll
никогда не
confirm it.
столчу подобного
I
говорить,
wouldn't
если
have
этого
said
нет.
anything like that if it hadn't happened.
Невозможно.
I don't
Okay.
really think.
Were you
Well, it's
sincere?
impossible now.
Would you have joined NATO?
Послушайте,
Look, I asked the question, is it possible or not? And the answer I got was no. If I was insincere in my desire to find out what the leadership position was,
But if he had said yes, would you have joined NATO?
Well, he said yes. He
Yes,
said,
it
I
was-
think so.
if he had said yes, the process of rapprochement would have commenced, and eventually it might
Didn't
have
he say
happened
yes?
if
He
we
said
had
yes, I
seen
think-
some
he said, I
sincere
think so.
wish on
That's
the other
close
side
enough
of
to
our
a yes.
partners.
Но
But
это не
it didn't
закончилось.
happen.
He wasn't
Well,
like,
no means
Did
no.
he follow up
Okay,
with let's do it?
fine.
Why do you think that is? Just to get to motive, I know you're clearly bitter about it.
Oh,
I understand.
that's fucked. You're saying
But why do
calling
you
him
think
bitter?
the West rebuffed you then? Why the hostility? Why did the end of the Cold War not fix the relationship? What motivates this from your point of view?
Вы сказали, что
You said I was bitter about the answer. No, it's not bitterness. It's just a statement of fact. We're not bride and groom, bitterness, resentment. It's not about those kind of matters in such
He
circumstances.
does resent
We just
that
realized we
that-
weren't
that
welcome
comment
there,
about
that's all.
bitterness.
Okay,
I'm not a woman,
fine.
buddy. I'm not
But
a
let's
woman.
build
that's what he's saying.
relations
I'm not a
in another
woman.
manner.
We're not
Let's
bride
look
and groom.
for common
You're
ground
not my
elsewhere.
hubby that gets to.
Why we received such a negative response, you should ask your leaders. I can only guess why. Too big a country with its own opinion and so on.
слишком большая страна.
And the United States, I've seen how issues are being resolved in NATO.
Ну, я же видел, как решают.
I will give you another example now concerning Ukraine.
Another
Из
example,
примеров сейчас приведу,
Putin.
касающийся
The US leadership exerts pressure, and all NATO members obediently vote,
слушай, голосуют. Даже если им
even
чего-то
if they
не
do
нравится.
not like
Сейчас
something.
я скажу в этой связи, что происходило с Украиной.
Now, I'll tell you what happened in this regard with Ukraine in 2008, although it's being discussed. I'm not going to open a secret to you, say anything new. Nevertheless, after that we tried to build relations in different ways.
This stupid price action. We got
For
to wait
example,
another hour
the events in the
for
Middle
the
East,
karaoke.
in Iraq.
Yeah, anything.
We were building relations with the United States in a very soft, prudent, cautious manner.
Oh, man.
I repeatedly raised the issue that the United States should not support separatism or terrorism in the North Caucasus, but they
Yeah.
continue to do it anyway.
That
And
is
political
true.
support, information support, financial support, even military support came from the United States and its satellites for terrorist groups in the Caucasus. I once raised this issue with my colleague, also the President of the United States. He says, "It's impossible. Do you have proof?" I said, "Yes." I was prepared for this conversation, and I gave him that proof. He looked at it, and you know what he said? "I apologize, but that's what happened." I'll quote. He says, "Well, I'm gonna kick their ass." We waited and waited for some response. There was no reply. I said to the FSB director, "Write to the CIA, what is the result of the conversation with President?" He wrote once, twice, and then we got a reply. We have the answer in the archive.
It
The
looks
CIA
heavy.
replied,
At least on
"We
this
have been
5
working with
minutes
the
chart, it
opposition
looks
in
heavy.
Russia. We believe that this is the right thing to do, and we will keep on doing it." Just ridiculous. Well, okay. We realized that it was out of the question.
Forces in opposition to you. So you're saying the CIA is trying to overthrow your government.
Ну, конечно, имелось в виду в данном
Of
случае.
course, they meant in that particular case the separatists, the terrorists who fought with us in the Caucasus.
Они их называли.
That's who they called the opposition.
Это вот второй момент.
This is the second
Очень
point.
важный.
The third moment is a very important one. Is the moment when the US missile defense system was created.
Начало.
The beginning.
И мы долго уговаривали.
We persuaded for a long time not to do it in the United States.
Меня пригласили в
Moreover,
What if it holds here?
after was invited by Bush Jr.'s father, Bush Sr., to visit his
We
place on the
gotta
ocean,
anticipate people will get on, especially
I had a very serious
Yes,
conversation
this
with
is
President Bush and his team.
almost definitely around those
I
levels.
proposed that the United States, Russia, and Europe jointly create a missile defense system that, we believe,
Мы считаем,
if created unilaterally, threatens our security, despite the fact that the United States officially said that it was being created against missile threats from Iran. That was the justification for the deployment of the missile defense system. I suggested working together, Russia, the United States, and Europe. They said it was very interesting. They asked me, "Are you serious?" I said, "Absolutely."
May I ask, what year was this?
ну, я не помню. Вот,
I don't remember.
в интернете, когда я был.
It is easy to find out on the internet when I was in the USA at the invitation of Bush Sr. It is even easier to learn from someone I'm going to tell you about.
Мне
Well, the
сказали, это
invitation of
очень
Bush Sr. would be
I was told it was very interesting.
the 90s,
I
but
said, just imagine if we could tackle such a global strategic security challenge
makes
together.
sense. Maybe Bush
The
Jr.
world will change.
спор на
We'll probably have disputes, probably economic and even political ones, but we could drastically change the situation in the world. He says yes, and asks, "Are you serious?" I said, "Of course. We need to think about it," I'm told.
Вот в этот кабинет.
I said, "Go ahead, please." Then Secretary of Defense Gates, former director of CIA, and Secretary of State Rice came in here, in this cabinet, right here at this table. They sat on this table. Me, the foreign minister, the Russian defense minister on that side.
Министр обороны.
They said to me,
Они мне
"Yes, we have thought about it. We agree." I said, "Thank God, great,
Но
but with some exceptions."
So twice you've described U.S. presidents making decisions and then being undercut by their agency heads. So it sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who were elected in your telling.
именно так.
That's right,
В конечном
that's right.
итоге нас послали подальше. Я не буду
In the end, they just told us to get lost. I'm not going to tell you the details because I think it's incorrect. After all, it was confidential conversation. But our proposal was declined. That's a fact.
Is he listening in English?
It was
or are they
right
just
then when
cutting
I
out
said,
it's translated to
look,
him?
but then we will be forced to
Probably
take
isn't saying
countermeasures. We will create such strike systems that will certainly overcome missile defense systems. The answer was, we are not doing this against you, and you do what you want, assuming that it is not against us, not against the United States. I said, okay. Very well. That's the way it went. And we created hypersonic systems with intercontinental range, and we continue to develop them. We are now ahead of everyone, the United States and the other countries, in terms of the development of hypersonic strike systems, and we are improving them every day. But it wasn't us. We proposed to go the other way, and we were pushed back. Now, about NATO's expansion to the east. Well, we were promised no NATO to the east, not an inch to the east, as we were told. And then what? They said, well, it's not enshrined on paper, so we'll expand. So there were 5 waves of expansion, the Baltic states, the whole of Eastern Europe, and so on. And now I come to the main thing. They have come to the Ukraine, ultimately. In 2008, at the summit in Bucharest, they declared that the doors for Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO were open. Now about how decisions are made there. Germany, France seem to be against it, as well as some other European countries. But then, as it turned out later, President Bush, and he's such a tough guy, a tough politician, as I was told later, he exerted pressure on us and we had to agree. It's ridiculous, it's like kindergarten. Where are the guarantees? What kindergarten is this? What kind of people are these? Who are they? You see, they were pressed, they agreed. And then they say, Ukraine won't be in the NATO, you know? I say, I don't know. I know you agreed in 2008. Why won't you agree in the future? Well, they pressed us then. I say, why won't they press you tomorrow? And you'll agree again. Well, it's nonsensical. Who's there to talk to? I just don't understand. We're ready to talk. But with whom? Where are the guarantees? None. So they started to develop the territory of Ukraine. Whatever is there, I have told you the background, how this territory developed, what kind of relations there were with Russia. Every second or third person there has always had some ties with Russia. And during the elections, in already independent, sovereign Ukraine, which gained its independence as a result of the Declaration of Independence, and by the way, it says that Ukraine is a neutral state, and in 2008, suddenly the doors or gates to NATO were open to it. Oh, come on. This is not how we agreed. Now, all the presidents that have come to power in Ukraine, they relied on electorate with a good attitude to Russia in one way or the other. This is the southeast of Ukraine. This is a large number of people. And it was very difficult to dissuade this electorate, which had a positive attitude towards Russia. Viktor Yanukovych came to power, and how? The first time he won after President Kuchma, they organized a third round, which is not provided for in the constitution of Ukraine. This is a coup d'etat. Just imagine, someone in the United States wouldn't like the outcome.
In 2014?
Before that. No, this was before that. After President Kuchma, Viktor Yanukovych won the elections. However, his opponents did not recognize that victory. The US supported the opposition, and the third round was scheduled. What is this? This is a coup. The US supported it, and the winner of the third round came to power. Imagine if in the US something was not to someone's liking, and the third round of election, which the US Constitution does not provide for, was organized. Nonetheless, it was done in Ukraine. Okay, Viktor Yushchenko, who was considered a pro-Western politician, came to power. Fine. We have built relations with him as well.
He killed Viktor Yushchenko,
He came to
right?
Moscow with visits.
We
We
visited
visited
some,
Kiev.
radioactive
I visited too.
material or something, didn't he?
We met in an informal setting. If he's pro-Western, so be it. It's fine. Let people do their job.
Пускай
The
ситуация...
situation should have developed inside independent Ukraine itself. As a result of
Running these lows
Kuchma's
yet.
leadership, things got
Because you're
worse
running
and
these lows.
Viktor Yanukovych came to power after all.
Ситуация ухудшилась.
Maybe he wasn't the best president and politician, I don't know. I don't want to give assessments. However, the issue of the association with the EU came up.
Но встал вопрос об ассоциации с Евросоюзом.
We have always been lenient to this, suit yourself. But when we read through the Treaty of Association, it turned out to be a problem for us, since we had a free trade zone and open customs borders with Ukraine, which under this association had to open its borders for Europe, which would have led to flooding of our market.
Границы перед Европой. И потоком все на наши рынки.
We said, no, this is not going to work. We shall close our borders with Ukraine then. The customs borders, that is.
Начал считать.
Yanukovych started to calculate how much Ukraine was going to gain, how much to lose, and said to his European partners, I need more time to think before signing. The moment he said that, the opposition began to take destructive steps which were supported by the West. It all came down to Maidan and a coup in Ukraine.
So he did more trade with Russia than with the EU. Ukraine did.
Ну, конечно. Ну, конечно, конечно.
Of course. It's not even the matter of trade volume, although for the most part it is.
Oh, that's the guy.
It
that,
is the matter of
I guess he was
cooperation
head of
ties, which
head
the
of
entire Ukrainian
Ukraine
economy was based on.
2014, right?
The cooperation ties between the enterprises were very close since the times of the Soviet Union. One enterprise there used to produce components to be assembled both in Russia and Ukraine and vice versa. They used to be very close ties.
Нам из Соединенных Штатов.
A coup d'etat was committed, although I shall not delve into details now, as I find doing it inappropriate, the US told us.
Позицию.
Calm Yanukovych down, and we will calm the opposition. Let the situation unfold in the scenario of a political settlement. We said, all right, agreed, let's do it this way. As the Americans requested, Yanukovych did use neither the armed forces nor the police, yet the armed opposition committed a coup in Kiev.
Провела госперевод.
What is that supposed to mean?
Как это понимать?
Who do you think you are?
Вы кто такие?
I wanted to ask the then US leadership.
With the backing of whom?
При поддержке ЦРУ, конечно.
With the backing of CIA, of course.
Которые, как я понимаю.
The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand.
Хотя это серьезно.
We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although,
Tucker
it is
wanted
a
to do the
serious
CIA.
organization. I understand.
Tucker's
My
not pushing
former
back on
vis-a-vis in the sense that I served in the first main directorate, Soviet Union's intelligence service.
Оппонентами все.
They have always been our opponents. A job is a job.
Но технически они все сделали правильно.
Technically, they did everything right. They achieved their goal of changing the government. However, from political standpoint, it was a colossal mistake. Surely it was political leadership's miscalculation. They should have seen what it would evolve into.
Итак, в 2014
So, in
году
2008, the doors of NATO were opened for
в
Ukraine.
2014 году
In 2014, there was a coup. They started persecuting those who did not accept the coup, and it was indeed a coup. They created a threat to Crimea, which we had to take under our protection. They launched the war in Donbass in 2014 with the use of aircraft and artillery against civilians. This is when it all started. There's a video of aircraft attacking Donetsk from above. They launched a large-scale military operation, then another one. When they failed, they started to prepare the next one. All this against the background of military development of this territory and opening of NATO's doors.
Okay, but we knew that. I guess this is not new information.
How could we not express concern over what was happening? From our side, this would have been a culpable negligence. That's what it would have been.
Вот что это было бы такое. Просто
It's just that the US political leadership pushed us to the line we could not cross, because doing so could have ruined Russia itself.
потому что это разрушало саму Россию. И потом мы не могли бросить наших единоверцев.
Besides, we could not leave our brothers in faith, in fact, a part of Russian people, in the face of this war
под
machine.
эту военную машину.
What was the, but that was 8 years before the current conflict started. So
Yeah.
what was the trigger for you? What was the moment where you decided you had to do this?
Ну, спровоцировал конфликт изначально.
Initially, it was the coup in Ukraine that provoked the conflict. By the way, back then the representatives of 3 European countries, Germany, Poland and France, arrived. They were the guarantors of the signed agreement between the government of Yanukovych and the opposition. They signed it as guarantors. Despite that, the opposition committed a coup, and all these countries pretended that they didn't remember that they were guarantors of the peaceful settlement.
Никто не вспоминает.
They just threw it in the stove right away, and nobody recalls that. I don't know if the US know anything about the agreement between the opposition
So
and
it
the
took us 15
authorities
minutes, but he
and
finally
its 3
answered the
guarantors
question,
who,
which I guess
instead of bringing this whole situation back in the
is not
political
that,
field,
not new
supported
information,
the
not,
coup.
not very interesting.
Although it was meaningless, believe me,
Янукович совсем согласился.
because President Yanukovych agreed to all conditions. He was ready to hold an early election, which he had no chance of winning, frankly speaking.
Зачем, Господи?
Everyone knew that.
Now it is
Then why the coup? Why the
8:54,
victims?
35
Why
minutes till
threatening
market
Crimea?
open.
Why launching an
Anything
operation in
on the
Donbass?
Bitcoin side.
This I do not understand. That is exactly what the miscalculation is. CIA did its job to complete the coup.
Один из замов госсекретаря.
I think one of the deputy secretaries of state said that it cost a large sum of money, almost 5 billion.
Зачем?
But the political mistake was colossal.
На самом деле тоже самое.
Why would they have to do that? All this could have been done legally, without victims, without military action, without losing Crimea.
Пальцем не пиши.
We would have never considered to even lift a finger if it hadn't been for the
Jasmine's
bloody
here.
developments on Maidan.
She loves her
Мы
daddy.
согласились с тем, что
Because we agreed with the fact that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, our borders should be along the borders of former Union's republics. We agreed to that.
с расширением НАТО.
But we never agreed to NATO's expansion, and moreover, we never agreed that Ukraine would be in NATO.
Базы НАТО. Без всяких разговоров с нами.
We did not agree to NATO bases there without any discussion with us. For decades, we kept asking, don't do this, don't do that.
В последних событиях. Ну, во-первых,
And what triggered the latest events?
руководство Украины заявило,
Firstly, the current Ukrainian leadership declared that it would not implement the Minsk agreements, which had been signed, as you know, after the events of 2014 in Minsk, where the plan of peaceful settlement in Donbass was set forth.
нет, руководство
But no, the current Ukrainian leadership, foreign minister, all other officials, and then president himself said that they don't like anything about the Minsk agreements.
иными словами, исполнять не собираются.
In other words, they were not going to implement it.
Прямо сказали, что подписывали уже
A year or a year and a half ago, former leaders of Germany and France said openly to the whole world
это соглашение Минска.
that they indeed signed the Minsk agreements, but they never intended to implement them. They simply led us by the nose.
Was there anyone for you to talk to? Did you call a U.S. President, Secretary of State, and say, if you keep militarizing Ukraine with NATO forces, this is going to be we're going to act?
Мы постоянно об этом говорим. Мы постоянно об этом
Tiny
говорим.
blue.
Мы обращались
We talked about this all the time. We addressed the United States and European countries' leadership to stop these developments immediately,
Little ladies
to
love
implement the
that.
Minsk
Even
agreements.
kitty ladies.
Frankly speaking, I didn't know how we were going to do this, but I was ready to implement them. These agreements were complicated for Ukraine. They included lots of elements of those Donbass territories' independence. That's true. However, I was absolutely confident, and I'm saying this to you now. I honestly believe that if we managed to convince the residents of Donbass, and we had to work hard to convince them to return to the Ukrainian statehood, then gradually the wounds would start to heal.
постепенно раны
When this part of territory reintegrated itself into common social environment, when the pensions and social benefits were paid again, all the pieces would gradually fall into place.
социальные пособия, все постепенно
No,
растет.
nobody wanted that. Everybody wanted to resolve the issue by military force only.
С помощью
But we could not let that happen. And the situation got to the point when the Ukrainian side announced, no, we will not do anything.
Are you a cat
They
or
also
are you a
started
dog?
preparing for military action. It was they who started the war in 2014. Our goal
I hope
is
that
to stop
fluff of
this
yours
war.
doesn't disrupt my
And we
mouse
did
when
not
I'm
start
playing
this war in
Counter-Strike later, Jesse.
2022. This is an attempt to stop it.
Dude, this
Do you
is
think
so
you've stopped
boring.
it now?
So boring.
I mean, have you achieved
Come
your
on,
aims?
Talk about something.
No, we haven't achieved our aims yet, because one of them is denazification. This means the prohibition of all kinds of neo-Nazi movements. This is one of the problems that we discussed during the negotiation process, which ended in Istanbul early this year.
Который завершился в Стамбуле в прошлом году в начале. Но
And it was not our initiative, because we were told by the Europeans, in particular, that it was necessary to create conditions for the final signing of the documents. My counterparts in France and Germany said,
в Германии говорили, ну как ты себе представляешь, как они будут подписывать?
how can you imagine them signing a treaty with a gun to their heads? The troops should be pulled back from Kiev. I said, all right. We withdrew the troops from Kiev.
Извините, от Киева.
As soon as we pulled back our troops from Kiev, our Ukrainian negotiators immediately threw all our agreements reached in Istanbul into the bin
Договоренности, достигнутые в Стамбуле.
and got prepared for a long-standing armed confrontation with the help of the United States and its satellites in Europe.
Yeah, this is the Biden-Boris Johnson.
That is how the
nuking, I
situation
guess,
has
of the
developed,
Agreement,
and
right?
that is how it looks now.
Да.
But what is, pardon my ignorance, what is denazification? What would that mean? What is,
Да, вот я как раз хочу сейчас об этом сказать. Это очень важный вопрос. Денацификация.
That is what I want to talk about right now. It is a very important issue. Denazification.
Искать, как говорят некоторые,
After gaining independence, Ukraine began to search, as some Western analysts say,
как
its
поставить
identity.
во главу угла этой идентичности на
And it came up with nothing better than to build this identity upon some false heroes who collaborated with
героев,
Hitler.
которые сотрудничали с Гитлером.
Weird.
Я уже
I guess,
говорил,
yeah,
что
because
I have already
Ukraine's
said that
anti-Russia,
in the early
Hitler
19th
was
century,
anti-Russia.
when the theorists of independence and sovereignty of Ukraine appeared,
они исходили
they
Are those
assumed that
Nazification roots
an
that
independent
going back to
Ukraine
World
should
War
have very
II,
good relations with
collaborating
Russia.
with Hitler, or is it just?
Но в силу исторического развития
But due to the historical development, those territories were part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Poland, where Ukrainians were persecuted and treated quite brutally, as well as were subject to cruel behavior.
идентичность вели себя очень жестоко. Это все осталось в памяти.
There were also attempts to destroy their identity.
All right, we got a new hourly.
Когда началась Вторая мировая война,
Oh, it's so
All
boring.
this remained in the memory of the people.
край-
When World War
If I wasn't
II broke
watching
out,
this might
part
be
of
a
this
day I would
extremely
just
nationalist elite collaborated with
it.
Hitler, believing that he would bring
Come
them
back
freedom.
tomorrow.
она начала сотрудничать с Гитлером, полагая, что
The German troops, even the SS troops, made Hitler's collaborators do the dirtiest work of exterminating the Polish and Jewish population.
грязную работу
Hence this brutal massacre of the Polish and Jewish population, as well as the Russian population too.
специалистам, которые с Гитлером
Вот.
сотрудничали.
Are you
Вот
hungry?
отсюда вот эта жестокая резня.
This was led by the persons who are well known, Bandera, Shukevich. It was those people who were made national heroes. That
Jazz,
is
do you have
the
any
problem.
questions for Putin?
And we are constantly told that nationalism and neo-Nazism exist in other countries as well. Yes, they are seedlings,
You're
but we
Persian. You get
uproot
along
them.
with
And other countries
Russians, don't
fight
you?
against them.
Iran and
But
Per-
Ukraine is
Iran
not
and
the
Russia
case.
are
These
allies.
people have been made into national heroes in Ukraine. Monuments to those people have been erected. They are displayed on flags. Their names are shouted by crowds that walk with torches,
Yeah, that might
as
be
it
true,
was in Nazi Germany.
Возводят. Они на флагах, они их имена кричат.
These were people who exterminated Poles, Jews, and Russians.
Это люди, которые уничтожали поляков, евреев и русских.
It is necessary to stop this practice and prevent the dissemination of this concept. I say that Ukrainians are part of the one Russian people. They say, no, we are a separate people. Okay, fine. If they consider themselves a separate people, they have the right to do so, but not on the basis of Nazism, the Nazi ideology.
Would you be satisfied with the territory that you have now?
Нет, сейчас закончим. Вы же задали вопрос по неонацизму и денацификации.
I will finish answering the question. You just asked a question about neo-Nazism and denazification.
Замалчивается на Западе.
Look, the president of Ukraine visited Canada. This story is well known, but being silenced in the Western countries.
Спикер парламента.
The Canadian Parliament introduced a man who, as the Speaker of the Parliament said, fought against the Russians during the World War II. Well, who fought against the Russians during the World War II? Hitler and his accomplices. It turned out that this man served in the SS troops. He personally killed Russians, Poles, and Jews. The SS troops consisted of Ukrainian nationalists who did this dirty work. The president of Ukraine stood up with the entire Parliament of Canada and applauded this man.
Yeah, that was
How can this be
crazy,
imagined?
dude.
The president of Ukraine himself, by the way, is a Jew by nationality.
Really, my question is, what do you do about it? I mean, Hitler's been dead for 80 years. Nazi Germany no longer exists. And so, true. And so, I think what you're saying is you want to extinguish or at least control Ukrainian nationalism. But how? How do you do that?
Вот послушайте меня. Ваш вопрос очень тонкий.
Listen to me. Your question is very subtle,
Скажу, как я думаю.
and I can tell you what I think. Do not take offense.
Of course.
Он, казалось бы, тонкий, он очень противный, этот вопрос.
This question appears to be subtle. It is quite pesky.
Значит,
You say Hitler has been dead for so many years,
люди, которые
80 years.
Уничтожали
But his example lives on.
He hasn't actually,
People
by the
who
way. I thought that
exterminated
was
Jews,
trying. He
Russians,
he didn't
and
actually
Poles are
die in World
alive.
War II. He escaped to
And the
Argentina.
president, the current president of
Show
today's
Hunting
Ukraine,
Hitler with,
applauds him in
Tim
the
Kennedy.
Canadian Parliament.
History
gives
Channel, I
a
believe.
standing
Check
ovation.
it out.
Can we
Very
say that
interesting.
we have completely uprooted this
He
ideology
was seen
if what we
with
see is
the prima
happening today?
ballerina at some point in Argentina.
That is what
at a private viewing.
denazification is in our understanding.
And regardless of whether he did it
We
or
have
not,
to get rid of those
definitely
people who maintain this concept
Bormann
and support
is
this practice and try to
number
preserve
one
it.
in
That
his
is what
right-hand man.
denazification
Definitely
is.
escaped.
That is what
And,
we mean.
Right.
so
My
you
question was a
know,
little more
like,
specific. It was,
Eichmann,
of course, not
a
a
lot of the other
defense
guys
of
escaped as well. So.
Nazis, neo or otherwise.
Why, how would
It
Hitler
was a
not
practical
escape
question.
if, like,
You don't
Martin
control the
Bormann
entire
is-
country. You don't control Kiev. You don't seem like you
That's
want
his name?
to.
That's his name, right?
So how do you eliminate a culture or an ideology or feelings or a view of history in a country that you don't control? What do you do about that?
Yeah, that guy.
А вы знаете, как вам не покажется странным, в ходе переговоров в Стамбуле
You know, as strange as it may seem to you, during the negotiations in Istanbul, we did agree that we have it all in writing. Neo-Nazism would not be cultivated in Ukraine, including that it would be prohibited at the legislative level. Mr. Carlson, we agreed on that. This, it turns out, can be done during the negotiation process. And there's nothing humiliating for Ukraine as a modern civilized state. Is any state allowed to promote Nazism? It is not, is it? That is it.
Sounds like an excuse.
will
though.
there
Is that
be
really,
talks
does he
and
really
why
care
haven't
about
there
that, or
been
does he care
talks
about
about
having the
resolving
land bridge
conflict in
to Crimea?
peace talks?
они были, они дошли до очень высокого
Одно
стадии
volume.
согласования позиций, сложно.
They have been.
Oh.
They reached a very high stage of coordination of positions in a complex process, but still they were almost finalized. But after we withdrew our troops from Kiev, as I have already said, the other side threw away all these agreements and obeyed the instructions of Western countries,
gonna run this
European
before
countries,
9:30?
and the
Probably
United
would,
States
but
to fight Russia to
They're
the
just gonna
bitter
hold
end.
right here. do nothing for the
Moreover,
next 30
the
minutes.
president of Ukraine
20
has
minutes.
legislated a ban on negotiating with Russia. He signed a decree forbidding everyone to negotiate with Russia. But how are we going to negotiate if he forbade himself and everyone to do this? We know that he is putting forward some ideas about this settlement, but in order to agree on something,
Should we get back
we
to 1
need to
minute?
have a dialogue.
What's
that
going
not
on
right?
on Bitcoin?
Well, but
Ooh,
you wouldn't
okay.
be speaking to the
Something-
Ukrainian president, you'd be speaking
something's
to
going on
the
on
American
Bitcoin.
president. When was the last time you spoke to Joe Biden?
I cannot remember when I talked to him. I do not remember. We can look it up.
You don't remember?
No. Why? Do I have to remember everything?
Yeah.
I have my own things to do. We have domestic political affairs.
Well, he's funding the war that you're fighting, so I would think that would be memorable.
Ну да, он финансирует.
Well, yes, he funds, but I talked to him before the special military operation, of course. And I said to him then, by the way, I will not go into details, I never do, but I said to him then, I believe that you are making a huge mistake of historic proportions by supporting everything that is happening there, in Ukraine, by pushing Russia away. I told him repeatedly, by the way. I think that would be correct if I stop here.
What did he say?
Можно, у него
Ask him, please. It is easier for you. You are a citizen of the United States. Go and ask him. It is not appropriate for me to comment on our conversation.
But you haven't spoken to him since before February of 2022.
нет, не разговаривал. Но у нас есть.
No, we haven't spoken.
Кстати говоря,
Certain contacts are being maintained, though. Speaking of which,
про мое предложение.
do you remember what I told you about my proposal to work together on a missile defense system?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff is ridiculous because he's talking about a missile defense system against Iran. And, I mean, if we're being real, like, they're allies and they kind of have been, at least for a long time. He's talking about a proposal with, was it Bush? Yeah, he was president starting in 2000, so between 2000 and 2008, I guess.
Можно спросить у всех. Они же
You can
все
ask all of
здоровы,
them.
здоровы.
All of them are safe and sound, thank God.
Бывший президент.
The former president, Condoleezza, is safe and sound, and I think Mr. Gates and the current director of the intelligence agency, Mr. Burns, the then ambassador to Russia, in my opinion, are very
Yes.
successful ambassador.
Они все свидетели этих разговоров.
They were all witnesses to these conversations.
То же самое,
Ask them.
если вам интересно, что ответил.
Same here. If you are interested in what Mr. President Biden responded to me, ask him. At any rate, I talked to him about it.
I'm definitely interested, but from the outside, it seems like this could devolve or evolve into something that brings the entire world into conflict and could initiate a nuclear launch. And so why don't you just call Biden and say, let's work this out?
I mean, come on, really? Biden, like he has any kind of power to have
What's
any
there to work out? It's
Yeah.
very simple.
deal making?
I repeat,
Есть контакты по линии там различных.
we have contacts through various agencies.
Я вам скажу, что мы говорим на этот счет.
I will tell you what we are saying on this matter and what we are conveying to the US leadership. If you really want to stop fighting, you need to stop supplying weapons. It will be over within a few weeks. That's it. And then we can agree on some terms.
You want to stop
Before you do
fighting,
that,
stop
stop.
supplying weapons.
What's easier?
And let them
Why would
get
I call him?
steamrolled.
What should I talk to him about? Or beg him for what?
And what
Вы
messages do you
собираетесь
get back?
поставить такое-то оружие на Украину?
You're going to deliver such and such weapons to Ukraine? Oh, I'm afraid, please don't. What is there to talk about?
Do you think NATO is worried about this becoming a global war or a nuclear conflict?
Yes, of course.
At least that's what they're talking about. And they're trying to intimidate their own
All right, come on,
population
let's run
with
these
an
lows,
imaginary
please.
Russian threat.
I want to see a little movement.
This is an
in these
obvious
charts,
fact.
dude. What the
And
hell?
thinking people,
Snail's
not
pace,
Philistines,
bro.
but thinking people, analysts, those who are engaged in real politics, just smart people understand perfectly well that
My
this is a fake.
goodness.
They're trying to fuel the Russian threat.
The threat I think you're referring
like it's
to
going
is a
now.
Russian invasion of Poland, Latvia, expansionist behavior. Can you imagine a scenario where you sent Russian troops to Poland?
Только в одном случае, если со стороны.
Only in one case, if Poland attacks Russia. Why? Because we have no interest in Poland, Latvia, or anywhere else. Why would we do that? We simply don't have any interest.
Certainly, it's not in his
It's
interest to
just
say he has
threat-mongering.
interest now.
Well, the argument, I know you know this, is that, well, he invaded Ukraine, he has territorial aims across the continent, and you're saying unequivocally you don't.
Taking a long time to answer that one.
Это абсолютно исключено.
It is absolutely out of the question.
Быть никаким аналитиком.
You just don't have to be any kind of analyst. It goes against common sense to get involved in some kind of a global war.
Глобальная война
Does it?
поставить на грань.
And a global war will
You'd
bring all
think.
humanity to the brink of destruction. It's obvious.
Вот. И есть, конечно, средства.
There are certainly means of deterrence. They have been scaring everyone, with us all along. Tomorrow Russia will use tactical nuclear weapons. Tomorrow Russia will use that. No, the day after tomorrow. So what?
Выбить из налогоплательщиков
In order to
США
extort additional money from US taxpayers and European taxpayers in the confrontation with Russia in the
Alright.
Ukrainian theater of
All
war.
right, we're starting to get some movement.
goal
okay,
is to
okay,
weaken
okay. We're below
Russia
some
as much
lows
as
here on
possible.
S&P. Do we keep going?
One of our senior United States senators from the
Give
state
me
of New
my
York, Chuck Schumer,
buy.
said yesterday, I believe, that we have to continue to fund the Ukrainian effort, or U.S. soldiers, citizens could wind up fighting there. How do you assess that?
Hi, you're tiny and fluffy. Hi, cutie. You hungry?
это провокация.
This is a provocation, and a cheap provocation at that.
Американские солдаты должны воевать.
I do not understand why American soldiers should fight in Ukraine. There are mercenaries from the United States there. The bigger number of mercenaries comes from Poland, with mercenaries from the United States in second place, and mercenaries from Georgia in third place.
Well, mercenaries are mercenaries. They're not
Well,
true.
if somebody has the
Anyone can
desire
play
to send
mercenary.
regular troops, that would certainly bring
Jasmine is a
humanity
baby.
to the brink of very
Jasmine will
serious
be a
global
mercenary
conflict.
For the right price.
This is obvious.
She'll go
Do the United
torture and
States
maim some
need
mouse
this?
for you.
What for?
Some mice,
У вас ничего не
mices.
Thousands of miles away from your national territory.
Jazzy, you want to go take care of some mice in the
Don't
trenches?
you have anything better to do?
Over in Ukraine.
с государством.
You have issues on the border,
Rats.
issues with migration,
so much
issues
fun.
with the national debt. More than $33 trillion. You have nothing better to do, so you should fight in Ukraine?
Понимая ситуацию, которая складывается.
Wouldn't it be better to negotiate with Russia? Make an agreement, already understanding the situation that is developing today, realizing that Russia will fight for its interests to the end?
Здравому смыслу
And realizing this, actually return to common sense, start respecting our country and its interests, and look for certain solutions.
что это гораздо умнее.
It seems to me that this is much smarter and more rational.
Who blew up Nord Stream?
You for sure.
I was busy that day. Nate, do you have? I did not blow up
То есть
Nord
у вас-
Stream.
у
Thank
вас-
you, though.
У вас лично, может быть, есть алиби, у вас лично.
You personally may have an alibi, but the CIA has no such alibi.
Do you have evidence that NATO or the CIA did it?
Вы знаете, я не
You know, I won't get into details, but people always say in such cases, look for someone who is interested. But in this case, we should not only look for someone who is interested, but also for someone who has capabilities. Because there may be many people interested, but not
Motive
all of
and
them are
means,
capable
bro.
of
He's saying
sinking to
motive
the
and
bottom
means.
of
That's
the
all you're
Baltic
saying.
Sea
You're not
and
saying
carrying out
evidence.
this
You're just saying
explosion.
motive and means.
These two
I mean, I'm pretty
components
sure
should be
that we did
connected.
do that.
Who is
but
interested and who is capable of doing it?
Still,
But I'm
motive and
confused. I
means
mean,
is
that's
not
the
what you're
biggest
asking.
act of industrial terrorism ever, and
Yeah,
it's the
sure.
largest emission of CO2 in history. Okay, so if you had evidence, and presumably given your security services, your intel services, you would, that NATO, the US, CIA, the West did this, why wouldn't you present it and win a propaganda victory?
He could send information victory.
В войне пропаганды общество.
Yeah.
In the war of propaganda, it is very difficult to defeat the United States because the United States controls all the world's media and many European media. The ultimate beneficiary of the biggest European media are American financial institutions. Don't you know that?
Yes, I do.
So it is possible to get involved in this work, but it is cost prohibitive, so to speak.
Is it?
We can
though?
simply shine the spotlight on our sources of information, and we will not achieve results.
Oh, I
It is
see.
clear to the whole world what happened, and even American analysts talk about it directly. It's true.
Yes, but here's a question you may be able to answer. You worked in Germany, famously. The Germans clearly know that their NATO partner did this, and it damaged their economy greatly. It may never recover. Why are they being silent about it? That's very confusing to me. Why wouldn't the Germans say something about it?
They
Ну,
are
это
all.
тоже удивляет.
Come on.
This also confuses me.
Germany is like the head of the EU.
But today's German leadership is guided
They
by the
print the
interests
money.
of the collective West rather than its national interests. Otherwise, it is difficult to explain the logic
Print
of
the
their
euro.
action or inaction. After all, it is not only about Nord Stream 1, which was blown up, and the Nord Stream 2 was damaged. But one pipe is safe and sound, and gas can be supplied to Europe through it. But Germany does not open it. We are ready, please. There's another route through Poland, called Yamal Europe, which also allows for large flow. Poland has closed it, but Poland pecks from the German hand. It receives money from the pan-European funds, and Germany is the main donor to these pan-European funds. Germany feeds Poland to a certain extent, and they close their route to Germany. Why? I don't understand. Ukraine, to which the Germans
It's a little
supply
weird.
weapons and give
Not
money.
gonna lie.
Germany is the second sponsor of the United States in terms of financial aid to Ukraine. There are two gas routes through Ukraine. They simply
What do
closed
we
one
got
route.
here?
The Ukrainians. Open the second route and please get gas from Russia. They do not open it. Why don't the Germans say, look guys, we give you money and weapons. Open up the valve, please. Let the gas from Russia pass through for us. We're buying liquefied gas at exorbitant prices in Europe,
Втридорого покупаем сжиженный газ.
which brings the level of our competitiveness and economy in general down to zero.
До нуля.
Do you want us to give you money?
Хотите, чтобы мы
Let us have the decent existence. Make money for our economy, because this is where the money we give you comes from. They refuse to do so. Why? Ask them.
что здесь, что
That is what is like in their heads.
нам, знаете,
Those are highly incompetent people.
Well, maybe the world is breaking into two hemispheres, one with cheap energy, the other without. And I want to ask you that. If we're now a multipolar world, obviously we are, can you describe the blocks of alliances? Who is in each side, do you think?
Hey.
послушайте,
We
вы сказали,
love
мир
it.
разделяется
This is
на
Listen, you have said that the world is breaking into two hemispheres.
He said if.
A
Yes.
human brain is divided into two hemispheres.
одну сферу деятельности, другая более креативная.
One is responsible for one type of activities, the other one is more about creativity and so on. But it is still one and the same head.
This is Jasmine.
The world should be a single whole. Security should be shared rather than meant for the golden billion.
Устойчивым и
That is the only scenario where the world could be stable,
The
sustainable,
golden
and
billion. That's an
predictable.
interesting turn of phrase.
Until
So
then,
he's basically saying the West is the golden billion, right? Because how many people are in Europe? Yeah. So like he's saying Europe plus the US. It's more than a billion, but maybe you subtract some of Europe.
while the head is split in two parts, it is an illness, a serious adverse condition. It is a period of severe disease
golden
that the
billion, I
world
like
is
it.
going through now.
It's good propaganda.
But I think that thanks to honest journalism, this work is akin to work of the doctors, this could somehow be remedied.
Well, let's just give one example, the US dollar, which has kind of united the world in a lot of ways, maybe not to your advantage, but certainly to ours. Is that going away as the reserve currency, the universally accepted currency? How have sanctions, do you think, changed the dollar's place in the world?
Знаете, это одна из грубейших
You know, to use the dollar as a tool of foreign policy struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by the US political leadership.
Is it?
Это основа основ
It's worked so far.
могущества США.
I don't
The
love it.
dollar is the cornerstone of the United States power. I think everyone understands very well that no matter how many dollars are printed, they are quickly dispersed all over the world.
Yeah.
По-моему, 3%, примерно 3-4, что ли.
It's not a mistake. It's by design. It's smart.
Приемлемо для США абсолютно.
Inflation in the United States is minimal. It's about 3 or 3.4%, which is, I think, totally acceptable for the US. But they won't stop printing. What does the debt of $33 trillion tell us about? It is about the emission.
Как только политическое руководство приняло решение использовать доллар в качестве инструмента.
All right, we're coming up here on 9:30.
Nevertheless,
We're
it
coming up
is
on
the main
9:30.
weapon used by the United States to preserve its power across the world. As soon as the political leadership decided to use the US dollar as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power. I would not like to use any strong language, but it is a stupid thing to do and a grave mistake.
Сокращаются запасы доллара. Все смотрят на то, что происходит, да, и начинают искать.
Look at what is going on in the world. Even the United States allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world. What did we have here? Until 2022, about 80% of Russian foreign trade transactions were made in US dollars and euros.
80%.
Значит,
US dollars accounted for approximately 50% of our transactions with third countries, while currently it is down to 13%.
Wow.
It wasn't us who banned the use of the US dollar.
США приняли решение ограничить.
Yeah, sometimes you cut someone off the
We had no
teeth
such
and they
intention.
find independence.
It was
you know?
decision of the United States to restrict our transactions in US dollars.
Yeah.
I think it is complete foolishness from the point of view of the interests of the United States itself and its taxpayers, as it damages the US economy, undermines the power of the United States across the world. By the way, our transactions in yuan accounted for about 3%.
Сейчас 34%.
Today, 34% of our transactions are made in rubles,
Yeah.
and about as much,
Столько же 30.
a little over 34% in yuan.
Зачем Соединенные Штаты это сделали?
Why
Only
did the United
13%
States
US
do
used to be
this?
80%.
My only guess is self-conceit.
Думали, наверное, что
They
всё
probably thought it would
I mean-
lead to full collapse, but nothing collapsed. Moreover, other countries, including oil producers, are thinking of and already accepting payments for oil in yuan.
Yeah.
Do you even realize what is going on or not?
Yeah, dude. The dollar
Does
hegemony is
anyone in the United
collapsing.
States realize this?
понимает тех же Соединенных Штатов.
What are you doing? You're cutting yourself off. All experts say this.
All right, we got 9:30 coming up here. We got 9:30 coming up here.
Ask any intelligent and
Are we
thinking
gonna run?
person
Are
in
we
the
gonna run
United
down
States
at
what
9:30?
the
We're gonna
dollar
run these
means for
lows.
the US.
But
You're killing it with your own hands.
I think that's a I
Judgment's a little
think it's a
big.
fair assessment. The question is what
We love
comes
it.
next,
Hi, tiny
and maybe
folks.
you trade one colonial power for another,
You're
much
cute.
less
Yeah, you're cute.
sentimental and forgiving colonial power. I mean, is the BRICS, for example, in danger of being completely dominated by the Chinese economy in a way that's not good for their sovereignty? Do you worry about that?
Oh, yeah, so she's between two
Well,
boogeymen.
we
right?
have heard those boogeyman stories before. It is a boogeyman story. We're
No,
neighbors with
is it a
China.
boogeyman story,
You
or
cannot
is
choose
it
neighbors just
true?
as you cannot choose close relatives. We share a border of 1,000 kilometers with them. This is number one. Second, we have a centuries-long history of coexistence. We're used to it. Third, China's foreign policy philosophy
And
is not
Mongolia
aggressive.
and Kazakhstan are kind of
Its
like
idea is to always look for
buffer zones
compromise,
too, right?
and we
Like,
can
they
see
have
that.
sort of mixed populations.
The next point is as follows. We are always told the same boogeyman story, and here it goes again. Through an euphemistic
Okay,
form,
come
but
on,
it is still the
928.
same boogeyman story.
You ready for this,
The
Jazzy?
cooperation
You ready,
with
my
China
baby?
keeps increasing. The pace at which
You
China's
ready?
cooperation
You ready?
with Europe
Look at
is
your tiny little
growing
smush
is
face. Are you
higher and
ready?
greater
You
than
wanna say hi?
that of the growth of Chinese-Russian
Hi.
cooperation.
Say hi.
Ask Europeans, aren't they afraid?
Yeah,
They
she's
might be, I don't know.
a-
But they are still trying to access China's market at all costs, especially now that they are facing
Love her.
economic problems. Chinese businesses are also exploring the European market. Do Chinese businesses have small presence in the United States? Yes, the political decisions are such that they are trying to limit their cooperation with China. It is to your own detriment, Mr. Tucker, that you are limiting cooperation with China. You are hurting yourself. It is a delicate matter, and there are no silver bullet solutions,
I mean,
just
we've
as it
been
is with the
pretty
dollar.
cooperative with China for the last several decades.
So,
outsourcing
before
everything.
introducing any
Let's see, where's
illegitimate
this
sanctions,
shirt made in China?
illegitimate in terms of the Charter of the United Nations,
It's a tag list.
one
I
should
can't-
think very carefully.
Nah,
For decision makers, this appears
Probably
to
in
be a
China.
problem.
maybe not. Maybe it's made somewhere cheaper.
So you said a moment ago that the
All right,
war would
9:30.
be a lot
Boom,
better
boom,
if
boom,
it
boom,
weren't
boom.
broken
It's running the
into
lows. It's running
competing
the lows.
alliances, if
Wait,
there was
why are they
cooperation
going opposite
globally.
directions? The hell?
One of the reasons you don't have that is because the
Wait, do
current
I?
American administration is dead set against you. Do you think if there were a new
What's going
administration
on? They're
after
going
Joe
opposite
Biden, that
directions.
you would be able to reestablish communication with the U.S. government? Or does it not matter who the president is?
Сейчас скажу, но чтобы закончить предыдущий вопрос. У
I
нас
will tell you.
So,
But let me finish the previous
this
thought.
thing, I can't even see if it
We,
ran the
together
low.
with my colleague and friend, President Xi Jinping, set a goal to reach $200 billion of mutual trade with China this year. We have exceeded this level. According to our figures, our
Ran it
bilateral
by
trade with
0.5.
China totals already $230 billion, and the Chinese statistics says it is $240 billion. One more important thing. Our trade is well balanced, mutually complementary in high tech, energy, scientific research and development. It is very balanced. As for BRICS, where Russia took over the presidency this year, the BRICS countries are, by and large, developing very rapidly. Look, if memory serves me right,
Yeah, what is
back
this?
in
Why is-
1992, the share of the G7
why are they
countries in the
going
world
opposite
economy
directions?
amounted to 47%,
I mean, the Nasdaq is what I was expecting.
whereas in 2022 it
I
was
wanna be
down
buying
to,
this, although now
I
I
think,
wanna
a
pull
little
this
over
low.
30%.
в Нью-Йорке мировой экономики составляла
The BRICS countries accounted for only 16% in 1992, but now their share is greater than that of the G7. It has nothing to do with the events in Ukraine. This is due to the trends of global development and world economy, as I mentioned just now. And this is inevitable. This will keep happening. It is like the rise of the sun. You cannot prevent the sun from rising. You have to adapt to it. How do the United States adapt? With the help of force, sanctions, pressure, bombings, and use of armed forces.
Okay,
This is
run that
about
low harder
self-conceit.
there.
Your political establishment
one,
does
though.
not
What's this
understand
one?
that the world is changing under objective circumstances. And in order to preserve your level, even if someone aspires
Yeah, what
pardon
is
me,
going on,
to the level
dude?
of dominance,
Jesus.
you have to
They're
make the
not
right
going the same
decisions in a
direction.
competent and timely manner. Such brutal actions, including with
Man, they
regard
don't want
to
anyone
Russia
to trade this
and,
this morning,
say,
huh?
other countries, are counterproductive. This is an obvious
pick a
fact.
side.
It has already become
think-
evident.
сохранить свой уровень.
Still think down then up.
You just asked me if
That
another
might have
leader
been the
comes
down
and
already.
changes something. It is not about the leader. It is not about the personality of a particular person. I had a very good relationship with, say, Bush. I know that in the United States, he was portrayed as some kind of a country boy who does not understand much. I assure you that this is not the case. I think he made a lot of mistakes with regard to Russia, too.
Yeah.
I told you about 2008 and the decision
Definitely
in
was not the
Bucharest
case.
to
He's-
open the
you know,
NATO's
he comes
doors
from
for
a
Ukraine
family
and
of
so on.
CIA.
That happened during his
He
presidency.
was a
He actually exercised
Skull
pressure
and
on the
Bones
Europeans.
member. His dad
But
was
in
head of
general,
CIA,
on
his
a
dad was
personal
president,
human
his
level,
dad
I had a
implicated
very
in
good
Kennedy
relationship with him.
assassination,
He was no
flying out
worse
the
than any other
assassins.
American or Russian or European politician. I assure you, he understood what he was doing as well as others. I had such personal relationship
Yeah, this
with
was
Trump
the
as
buy,
well.
I guess, but it's hard to buy above this level.
It is not about the personality of the
Well, I
leader.
guess that was
It is about the
yesterday's daily
elite's
low,
mindset.
So if you're expecting the daily to hold, I don't know.
If the
Wasn't
idea of
yesterday's daily low.
domination at any cost, based also on
Alright,
forceful
well-
actions, dominates the American society, nothing will
Let's
change.
see.
It will only get worse. But if, in the end, one comes to the awareness that the world has been changing due to the objective circumstances, and that one should be able to adapt to them in time, using the advantages
Okay,
that
so
the
should
US
we-
still has today, then
I still
perhaps
think we
something
gotta
will change.
take out some of this.
И вот смотрите,
Look, China's economy has become the first economy in the world in
We gotta be
purchasing power
patient.
parity.
There's no trade. There's no
In terms
trade.
of volume, it overtook
gotta
the
be
US
patient.
a long time ago. The USA comes second, then India, 1.5 billion people, and then Japan, with Russia in the fifth place. Russia was the first economy in Europe last year, despite all the sanctions and restrictions. Is it normal from your point of view? Sanctions, restrictions, impossibility of payments in dollars, being cut off from SWIFT services, sanctions against our ships carrying oil, sanctions against airplanes, sanctions in everything, everywhere.
Yeah. Well, the U.S. isn't like you fighting in Ukraine.
The largest number of sanctions in the world which are applied against Russia. And we have become Europe's first economy during this time.
ну надо же подумать.
Yeah, that's a good
The tools
point.
that US uses don't work. Well, one has to think about what to do. If this realization comes to the ruling elites, then yes, then the first person of the state will act in anticipation of what the voters and the people who make decisions at various levels expect from this person. Then maybe something will change.
But you're describing two different systems. You say that the leader acts in the interest of the voters, but you also say these decisions are not made by the leader, they're made by the ruling classes. You've run this country for so long, you've known all these American presidents. What are those power centers in the United States, do you think? Like, who actually makes the decisions?
The bankers, bro.
Это Америка сложная страна, такая очень, с одной стороны, консервативная.
I don't know. America is a complex country,
Yeah, right.
conservative on one hand,
He already
rapidly
called it out.
changing on the
Said
other.
The bankers.
It's not
The
easy for us to
media
sort it
does
all
the
out.
interests of the bankers.
Who makes decisions
Doesn't
in the
do any
elections?
bankers.
Is it possible to understand this when each state has its own legislation? Each state regulates itself? Someone can be excluded from elections at the state level. It is a two-stage electoral system. It is very difficult for us to understand it. Certainly, there are two
But
parties
it's-
that are dominant, the Republicans and the Democrats. And within this party system, the centers that make decisions, that prepare decisions.
Потом смотрите,
Then, look, why, in my opinion, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, such an erroneous, crude, completely unjustified policy of pressure was pursued against Russia? After all, this is a policy of pressure. NATO expansion, support for the separatists in Caucasus, creation of a missile defense system. These are all elements of pressure. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Then, dragging Ukraine into NATO is all about pressure, pressure, pressure. Why? I think, among other things, because excessive production capacities were created. During the confrontation with the Soviet Union, there were many centers created and specialists on the Soviet Union who could not do anything else. They convinced the political leadership that it is necessary to continue chiseling Russia, to try to break it up, to create on this territory
ready to
several
run.
quasi-state entities,
Let's see
and
it
to
go
subdue
up
them
and come
in a
back and
divided
buy.
form, to use their combined potential for the future struggle with China. This is a mistake, including the excessive potential of those who worked for the confrontation with the Soviet Union.
Come on,
It
baby.
is necessary to get rid of this.
We get some
There
movement.
should be new, fresh forces, people who look into the future and
Don't
understand what is happening
buy
in the
it.
world.
Don't trade in this range, boys.
Look at how
Do not
Indonesia is
trade
developing.
between here and
600
here.
million people.
Not
Where
until we
can we
break
get
out
away
of
from
it.
that? Nowhere. We just have to assume that Indonesia
It's
will
probably gonna run
enter.
both
It is
sides.
already in the club of the world's leading economies, no matter who likes it or dislikes it. Yes, we understand and are aware that in the
With that
United
said,
States,
I think
despite all the economic
This
problems,
is a little time for
the
reversal.
situation
if we
is
look at it
still
on the
normal,
1
with
minute.
the economy growing decently.
Come on.
The GDP is growing by
Yeah, so you see
2.5%,
high,
if I'm not mistaken.
Lower low, higher high.
But if we want to ensure the
We can
future,
take
then
a
we
trade
need to
down
change
here.
our approach to what is changing. As I already said, the world would nevertheless change, regardless
stop
of
bullet
how
here.
the developments in Ukraine end. The world is changing. In the United States themselves, experts are writing that the United States are nonetheless gradually changing their position in the world.
What are you doing?
It is
my
your
baby? What are you
experts who
doing?
write that.
What
I
are you
just
doing,
read them.
sweetie?
The only question is how this would happen, painfully and quickly, or gently and gradually.
Okay, so
And this is written by people who are not
I
anti-American.
think we can
They
buy
simply
this.
follow global development trends. That's it. And in order to
Let's not
assess them
ready,
and
you
change
know?
policies, we need people who think, look forward, can analyze and recommend certain decisions at the level of political leaders.
I just have to ask, you've said clearly that NATO expansion eastward is a violation of the promise you all were made in 1990. It's a threat to your country. Right before you sent troops into
So,
Ukraine,
on the 1
the
minute,
Vice
let's check
President
out
of
this
the United
last-
States
this
went to
low
the
one more
Security
time,
Conference and encouraged
'cause we
the
haven't
President of
quite-
Ukraine
we
to
haven't
join
quite
NATO. Do
filled
you
this
think
in.
that
We
was an effort to
expected to.
provoke you into military action?
Мы просто, я
S&P
еще раз
looking more
повторю,
bullish,
мы
but
многократно,
Nasdaq's always more bullish.
предлагали
I repeat once again, we have repeatedly,
companies on the
proposed to seek a solution to the problems
Well,
that
has less
arose
chick
in
companies,
Ukraine
that's the
after
most
2014 coup
Oh, here
d'etat
we go.
through peaceful
Oh,
means.
here we go, here we go, here we
But
go.
no one listened to us.
And we buy.
And
Alright,
moreover,
buy.
the Ukrainian leaders who were under the
Bye.
complete US control suddenly declared that they would
loss
not
here.
comply with the Minsk agreements.
All right, boys, we're
They
in.
disliked everything there and continued military activity in that territory.
I said don't trade in this range, but we're doing it. It's a pretty small trade, right?
And in parallel, that territory was being exploited by NATO military structures
there.
under the guise of various personnel training and retraining centers.
Let's look at the one
They
minute
essentially
here.
began to create bases there. That's all.
Okay.
Ukraine announced that the Russians were a non-titular nationality, while passing the laws that limit the rights of non-titular nationalities in Ukraine.
вот эти все юго...
Ukraine, having received all the southeastern territories as a gift from the Russian people, suddenly announced that the Russians were a non-titular nationality in that territory.
All right, so we like
Is that
this
normal?
little gap in here.
решение.
That's what we want to hold.
All this put together led to the decision to end the war that
looks
neo-Nazis
like a
started in
reversal.
Ukraine in 2014.
Do you think Zelensky has the freedom to negotiate a settlement to this conflict?
I don't know the details. Of course, it's difficult for me to judge.
All right.
But
Well,
I believe
it's
he
in here,
has,
and we're
in
gonna
any
watch it
case,
on the higher
he used to have. His father fought against the fascists, Nazis, during World War II.
Did
I
his
once
father
talked to him
fight
about
in World War
this.
II?
I said,
Zelensky's father?
Volodya, what are you doing?
No way.
Why
his
are you
grandfather.
supporting neo-Nazis in Ukraine today, while your father fought against fascism? He was a frontline soldier. I will not tell you what he answered. This is a separate topic, and I think it's incorrect for me to do so. But as to the freedom of choice, why not? He came to power on the expectations of Ukrainian people that he would lead Ukraine to peace. He talked about this. It was thanks to this that he won the elections overwhelmingly. But then, when he came to power, in my opinion, he realized two things. Firstly, it is better not to clash with neo-Nazis and nationalists, because they are aggressive and very active. You can expect anything from them.
All right.
And secondly, the US-led West supports
Entry
them
wasn't
and
the
will
best.
always
We were
support
on the
those
1
who
minute. We had that
antagonize
little
with
gap
Russia.
in here.
It
We
is beneficial
probably
and
should have
safe.
been aiming for,
So
but
he took the
we wanted the
relevant
order
position
block
despite
just to be a little
promising his
bit
people to end the
safer
war
on
in
the entry. Make
Ukraine.
sure we get
He
in.
deceived his voters.
But do you think at this point, as of February 2024, he has the latitude, the freedom to speak with you or your government directly about putting an end to this, which clearly isn't helping his country or the world? Can he do that, do you think?
Some people would say it's helping the world because we're in the
Why
green.
He considers
Some people would
himself
say it's
head of
helping the world,
state.
right?
He
Because
won the elections.
depleting Russia's
Although we
military
believe
strength
in
helps
Russia
the
that
world,
the coup
according to
d'etat
people
is the
who are
primary source
anti-Russian.
of power
Yes.
for everything that happened after 2014.
Anti-Russian
And in this
is
sense,
all
even today, government is flawed. But he considers
Roll it
himself the
up,
president,
lace
and
it,
he
pop
is
it,
recognized by the
chase
United
it,
States,
all
all of
the
Europe,
shakes,
and
no,
practically the
shakes,
rest of the
no,
world
no,
in such a
basic.
capacity. Why not? Can. We negotiated with Ukraine in Istanbul. We agreed. He was aware of this. Moreover, the negotiation group leader, Mr. Arahamiya is his last name, I believe still heads the faction of the ruling party, the party of the president in the Rada.
Yonskis.
He still heads the presidential faction in the Rada, the country's parliament. He still sits there. He even put his preliminary signature on the document I am telling you about. But then he publicly stated to the whole world, we were ready to sign this document, but Mr. Johnson, then the Prime Minister of Great Britain, came and dissuaded us from doing this,
Yeah.
saying it was better to fight Russia.
We all know this.
They would give everything needed for us to return what was lost during the clashes with Russia, and we agreed with this proposal. Look, his statement has been published. He said it
Should we add
publicly.
here?
Can they return to this or not? The question is, do they want it or not?
Еще господин президент
Further on, President of Ukraine issued a decree prohibiting negotiations with us.
ну пусть он отменит.
Let him cancel that
Мы же не
decree,
отказывались.
and that's it.
Вот нам всё
We have
время
never refused
говорят,
negotiations,
«Россия готова».
indeed.
Да мы не отказывались.
We hear all the
Они
time,
что,
is Russia ready?
публично отказали.
Yes, we have not refused. It was them who publicly refused.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
let him cancel his
Russia's getting what they
decree
want.
and
They're getting the
enter
land
into
bridge,
negotiations.
and they
We
can
have
always
never
push more
refused.
later. So it's not
And the
surprising
fact
that
that they
Russia.
obeyed the demand or
agrees.
persuasion of
don't
Mr.
wanna keep losing
Johnson, the
people
former
and-
Prime Minister of Great Britain, seems ridiculous and very sad to me, because as Mr. Arakamiya put it, we could have stopped those hostilities with war a year and a half ago already. But the British persuaded us and we refused this. Where is Mr. Johnson now? And the war continues.
That's a good question. Where do you think he is, and why did he do that?
Да хрен его знает. Зачем? Я сам не понимаю. Общая
Hell
установка была.
knows.
Почему-то
I
все
don't
сложилось
understand it
именно,
myself.
что Россию можно победить на поле боя.
There was a general starting point. For some reason, everyone had the illusion that Russia could be defeated on the battlefield.
All right.
От чистого сердца, но
Because of arrogance, because of a pure heart, but not because
What do
of
we
a great
think?
mind.
Probably shouldn't be in this trade because
You've described
As I said,
the
you
connection
shouldn't be
between
taking
Russia
a
and
trade
Ukraine. You've described
between
Russia itself a couple
here
of
and
times
here,
as
but-
orthodox. That's central to your understanding of Russia. You said you're
it's a paper
orthodox.
trade. We can
What does
just
that
hold
mean?
it and see what happens, right?
For you, you're a Christian leader by your own description. So what effect does that have on you?
You know,
знаете, вот
as I already mentioned, in
как я уже сказал,
988,
987
Prince
году
Vladimir himself was
Владимир
baptized
крестил.
following the
Сам
example of
крестился,
his
потом
grandmother,
принял свою
Princess
бабку,
Olga. And then he baptized his
крестил
squad.
свою дружину,
And then,
постепенно
gradually,
крестил
over the
лет,
course of
крестил
several
всех
years,
славян,
he baptized all the Rus.
язычница от
It was a lengthy process, from pagans to Christians. It took many years. But in the end, this orthodoxy, Eastern Christianity, deeply rooted itself in the consciousness of the Russian people. When Russia expanded and absorbed other nations who profess Islam, Buddhism, and Judaism, Russia has always been very loyal to those people who profess other religions. This is her strength. This is absolutely clear.
Russia's always
And the
been pretty.
fact is that the main
not always,
postulates,
but
main
isn't
values
Russia
are very
haven't they
similar,
become more
not to say the
they were more
same
secular
in
than
all
the
world
Soviet
religions
Union?
I've just mentioned, and
They were
which
pretty
are the
anti-reli-
traditional
anti-religion
religions
at
of
that
the Russian
point.
Federation, Russia.
I mean, I guess those roots are still there, but
By the way, Russian authorities were always very careful about the culture and religion of those people who came into the Russian Empire. This, in my opinion, forms the basis of both security
good here.
and stability of the Russian statehood. All the peoples inhabiting
look
Russia
good here.
basically consider it their motherhood.
because
If, say, people move over to you or to Europe from Latin America, an even clearer and more understandable example,
this kinda ran
people
down,
come,
now
but
it's coming
yet
back
they
up.
have come to you or to European countries from their historical homeland.
Yeah, we should be getting
And
in
people who
'cause it's
profess different
hitting this
religions in
little
Russia
thing
consider
here.
Russia their motherland. They have no other motherland.
Let's see, can we get a higher high on the 15? There we go. All right, all
We are
right.
together. This is one big family, and our traditional values are very similar. I've just mentioned one big family, but everyone has his, her own family. And this is the basis of our society. And if we say that the motherland and the family are specifically
Man,
connected with each
the,
other,
the lack of symmetry is problematic.
it
fact
is
that
indeed the
S&P is going
case,
up all-
since it is
the other Q is
impossible to
going
ensure
down.
a normal future for our
Problematic.
children and our families unless we ensure a normal, sustainable future for the entire country, for the motherland.
So we need
That
to
is why
figure that
patriotic
out.
sentiment is so strong in Russia.
But can I say that the one way in which the religions are different is that Christianity is specifically a nonviolent religion. Jesus says, turn the other cheek, don't kill. How can a leader who has to kill, of any country, how can a leader be a Christian?
There you go.
How do
There
you
it is.
reconcile that?
All right, I think
yourself?
that's the clear reversal now. ES is going to run. NQ, maybe not. Should have been an ES, maybe.
It is very easy when it comes to protecting oneself and one's family, one's homeland. We won't attack anyone. When did the developments in Ukraine start? Since the coup d'etat and the hostilities in Donbass began, that's when they started.
Yeah.
And we're protecting our people, ourselves, our homeland, and our future. As for religion in general, you know, it's not about external manifestations. It's not about going to church every day or banging your head on the floor.
Banging your head on the floor?
It is in the heart.
What the hell?
And our culture is
Is
so
that something you do in
human-oriented.
Orthodox?
Dostoevsky,
Russian
who was
Orthodox
very well known
tradition?
in the West and the genius of Russian
Jeez, look
culture,
at why am I
Russian
not in
literature,
ES?
spoke a lot about this, about the Russian soul.
Why am I not in ES?
After all, Western society is more pragmatic. Russian people think more about the eternal, about moral values. I don't know, maybe you won't agree with me, but Western culture is more pragmatic after all. I'm not saying this is bad.
All right,
It makes
I
it
think
possible
we're
for today's
clear
golden
for
billion to
takeoff
achieve
here.
good success in
Boys?
production, even in science and so on. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that we kind of look the same, but our
Well,
minds
so
are
do you
built a
see
little
the
different.
supernatural at work as you look out across what's happening in the world now? Do you see God at work? Do you ever think to yourself, these are forces that are not human?
Да нет, я, честно говоря, так не думаю.
You
Я
don't
думаю о
believe,
том, что
No, to
Putin
be
doesn't
honest,
believe in
I
God.
don't think
общество
so.
Get out of here.
развивается вот по своим внутренним.
My
Putin
opinion
is
is that the
definitely an
development
atheist.
of the world community is in
why he
accordance
doesn't
with
mind,
inherent
like,
laws, and those laws are what they are.
Так было всегда.
Assassinating political opponents.
It's
Poisoning
always been
them.
this way in the history of mankind. Some nations and countries rose, became stronger and more numerous, and then left the international stage, losing the status they had accustomed to.
Не нужно приводить примеры. Но начиная
There's probably no need for me to give examples, but
So
we
this
could
is
start
what
with
we
the
call low
Genghis Khan and
probability
horde
conditions here,
conquerors,
as
the
ICT
Golden
said
Horde,
earlier.
and then end with the
But
Roman Empire.
we feel good about
It seems
this.
that there has never
just
been
because
anything
we
like
have
the
a bullish
Roman
market,
Empire in the
and
history
any
of
excuse to
mankind.
buy in a bullish market, you buy. Especially when we're
Nevertheless,
at
the
all-time
potential of
highs.
the barbarians gradually
And then
grew,
we have
as
like
did
this
their
15
population.
second. Well, we have like a.
In
5
general,
minute
the
reversal.
barbarians were getting stronger and
15-minute
begun to
reversal.
develop economically, as we
Boom,
would say
boom,
today.
and now,
они стали укрепляться.
you know,
This
obviously reversed
eventually
back on
led to the
15
collapse
second,
of
but
the
now we
Roman
have
Empire
this
and the regime
low,
imposed by the
low,
Romans.
higher high, come back down.
However, it took 5 centuries for the Roman Empire to fall apart.
В сегодняшней ситуации
The
разница
difference with what is happening now
процессы изменений
is that all the processes of change are happening at a much faster pace than in Roman times.
So when does the AI empire start, do you think?
The AI empire.
все в более
You're
сложные.
asking increasingly more complicated questions. To answer them, you need to be an expert in big numbers, big data, and AI. Mankind is currently facing many threats. Due to the genetic researches, it is now possible to create a superhuman, a specialized human being, a genetically engineered athlete, scientist, military man.
Yeah.
There are
happening in
reports
China.
that Elon Musk has already had a chip implanted in the human brain in the USA.
Илон Маск внедрил уже чип в мозг какого-то человека.
What do you think of that?
Ну, Маска, я думаю, что Маска остановит.
Well, I think there's no stopping Elon Musk. He will do as he sees fit. Nevertheless, you need to find some common ground with him, search for ways to persuade him. I think he's a smart person, I truly believe he is. So you need to reach an agreement with him because this process needs to be formalized and subjected to certain rules.
Того, что будет происходить с ним в связи с развитием вот этих новейших исследований и технологий. в генетике, либо
Humanity has to consider what is going to happen due to the newest development in genetics
поэтому
or
на-
in AI.
вот
One can
тогда,
make
когда
an approximate
человечество
prediction
Look
of
at
what
how
will happen.
much stronger
к своему
ES looks,
существованию
dude.
от
Jeez.
ядерного оружия,
I mean,
все
they're both
начали
at the top.
обладатели ядерного
Once
They're both at the
mankind
top.
felt an existential threat coming
Yes,
from
they're
nuclear
stronger, but
weapons,
like, let's,
all
if we
nuclear
zoom
nations
out, is
began
it
to
really
come to terms
stronger?
with one another since
когда
they realized
наступит
Maybe.
negligent use of nuclear weaponry could drive
Maybe.
humanity to extinction.
искусственного интеллекта,
They're
либо
both so, they're both
генетики, либо
equal
еще
on the
каких-то
weekly.
современных направлений, остановить которые
the
It
невозможно.
thing
is
is that
impossible to
yes,
stop
that's to make
research
them
in
high.
genetics or AI today, just as it was
think you got a
impossible
bit of a
to
way to
stop the
go.
use of gunpowder back in the day.
Исследования все равно будут. Но когда человечество почувствует угрозу для себя,
But as soon as we realize that the threat
Back in
comes
the
from
green, though. We like
unbridled and
that.
uncontrolled development of AI
We don't worry
or
about these stop
genetics or
losses.
any
We put
other
them in, and
field,
if they get
the
hit, they get
time will
hit.
come to
because we're
reach an
paper trading
international
at-
agreement
right now it's
on
two-
how
on
to
straight
regulate these
200K.
things.
It's at 223 right now.
I appreciate all the time you've given us.
So
I just
obviously
got to
in
ask you one
this,
last question, and that's about someone
account,
who's
I
very
would've
famous in
passed
the United
any
States,
kinda
probably
trading
not
challenge.
here. Evan Gershkovich, who's the Wall Street Journal reporter, he's 32, and he's been in prison for almost a year. This is a
Here we
huge
go.
story in the United States, and I just want to ask you directly, without getting into the details of it,
Guy
your
looks like a
version of what
CIA
happened,
agent.
if as a sign of your
Wall Street
decency,
Journal journalist,
you
but
would be
also
willing
CIA
to
operative.
release him
potentially?
to us, and we'll bring him back to the United States.
мы столько сделали жестов доброй воли, что, мне кажется, мы исчерпали все лимиты.
We have done so many gestures of goodwill out of decency that I think we have run out of them.
Ни разу не ответил.
What?
Но
We have never seen anyone reciprocate to us in a similar manner.
What do you mean? You got a
However,
lot for
in
it. They got a
theory, we
lot
can say that we do
for,
not rule out that we can do that
исключаем того,
that
что мы можем это
if our
сделать
partners take
female
reciprocal
basketball
steps.
player.
в встречном движении.
Didn't they get like the merchant of death?
When I talk about the partners, I first of all refer to special services.
Представители специальных служб.
Special services are in contact with one another. They are talking about the matter in question.
На то, чтобы не решить это.
There is no taboo to settle this issue.
Мы готовы её решать.
We are willing to solve
Там
it.
есть определенные условия, которые
But there are certain terms being discussed via special services
по
channels.
партнерским каналам между спецслужбами.
I believe an agreement can be reached.
Yeah.
So typically, I mean, this stuff has happened for obviously centuries. One country catches another spy within its borders, it trades it for one of its own intel guys in another country. I think what makes, and it's not my business, but what makes this different is the guy's obviously not a spy, he's a kid. And maybe he was breaking the
Not
law in
obviously
some
not
way,
a
but
spy.
he's not a
What do you mean he's a
spy, and
kid?
everybody knows that, and he's being held hostage.
think
in
they're kid
exchange,
spies.
Which is true. With respect, it's true, and everyone knows it's true. So maybe he's in a different category. Maybe it's not fair to ask for somebody else in exchange for letting him out. Maybe it degrades Russia to do that.
Вы знаете, ну, можно как угодно говорить, что такое шпион, что не шпион.
You know, you can give different interpretations to what constitutes a spy, but there are certain things provided by law. If person gets secret information and does that in conspiratorial manner, then this is qualified as espionage. And that is exactly what he was doing. He was receiving classified, confidential information, and he did it covertly. Maybe he did that out of carelessness or his own
Is it
initiative.
time?
Considering the sheer
10 o'clock,
fact
dude.
this is qualified as espionage. The fact
I always,
has
all
been
these
proven
hourlies always scare me, but
as
that
he was
looks
caught
like a.
red-handed when he was receiving this
see.
information. If it had been some
Yeah, this is
far-fetched
your-
excuse, some fabrication, something not proven, it would have been a
I
different
guess that's
story.
your
then.
950 macro.
But he was caught red-handed when he was
Or
secretly
is
getting
the other-
confidential
is this
information.
the green
is it then?
950 macro.
But are you suggesting that he was working for the U.S. government or NATO, or he was just a reporter who was given material he wasn't supposed to have? Those seem like very different things.
He is gonna be
Я
careful
не
what he can
знаю,
comment
на
on.
кого он работал. Но повторяю еще раз.
I don't know who
получение
he was
секретной
working for.
информации, конспиративной
But I would like to reiterate that getting classified information in secret
других структур,
is called
я не думаю, что он
espionage,
работал на
and
Монако.
he was working for the U.S. Special Services, some other agencies.
Вот, ну,
I don't think he was working for Monaco, as Monaco is hardly interested in getting that information.
есть,
It is up to special services to come to an agreement.
по нашему мнению, не связаны.
Some groundwork has been laid. There are people who, in our view, are not connected with special services.
Соединенных Штатов.
Let me tell you a story about a person serving a sentence in an allied country of the US.
Соображений, ликвидировал в
That
одной из
person, due to
европейских столиц
patriotic sentiments, eliminated a bandit in one of the European capitals.
во время событий на Кавказе, знаете, что
During the events in the Caucasus, do you know what he was
Alright,
doing?
so-
хочется говорить, но тем не менее. скажу.
I don't want to say that, but I will do it anyway. He was laying our soldiers, taken prisoner, on the road and then drove his car over their heads.
Oh Jesus!
What kind of person is that?
И человек
Can he even be called human?
нашелся патриот, который ликвидировал его в одной из европейских стран.
But there was a patriot who eliminated him in one of the European
По собственной
capitals.
инициативе или нет,
Whether he did it of his own volition or not, that is a different question.
Yeah, but Evan
Вот он-
Gershkovich didn't
вот он
do
с-
that. I mean, that's a completely different. I mean, this is a
Да, он не-
32-year-old like
Ну, он
newspaper
делал, да, он-
reporter.
He committed
делал
something different.
Да, он не просто журналист. Я повторяю еще раз, это журналист.
He's
который
not
получил
just a
секретную
journalist.
информацию
I
на
reiterate, he's a journalist who was secretly getting
Я
confidential
просто говорю про
information.
тех людей, которые
Yes, it is different, but still, I'm talking about other people who are essentially controlled by the US authorities, wherever they are serving a sentence.
Man.
There is an ongoing
So there's a
dialogue
guy
between the special
in
services.
London who
This
murdered
has to be
somebody.
resolved in a calm,
who
responsible,
apparently
and professional manner.
the guy he murdered
They're
apparently
keeping
was
in touch, so let
running
them
over
do their work.
the heads of Russian soldiers.
I do not rule out that the person you refer to, Mr. Gershkovitz,
Loco.
may return to his motherland. By the end of the day, it does not make any sense to keep him in prison in Russia. We want the U.S. Special Services to think about how they can contribute to achieving the goals our special services are pursuing. We are ready to talk. Moreover,
Man,
the
see,
talks
this is
are
why you don't trade in
underway.
these conditions, even when you
And
have a
there
trade,
have been
because
many
it's so
successful
painful.
examples
Like,
of
come
these
on.
talks crowned with success.
Been sitting in this for a
Probably
half
this
hour
is going
now.
to be crowned with
No
success as
movement.
well.
Только надо договариваться.
But we have to come to an agreement.
Ugh.
I hope you let him out. Mr. President, thank you.
Мне тоже хотелось.
I also want him to return to his homeland
Makes
at
me
last.
wanna vomit.
I'm absolutely sincere.
We like it when it's easy.
But let me say once
we like it
again,
when you buy
the
and it just
dialogue
goes
continues.
Огласки.
The more public we render things of this nature, the more difficult it becomes to resolve them. Everything has to be done in calm manner.
I wonder if that's
Закрытом
true
режиме.
with the war, though. Also, I mean, I guess I want to ask one more question, which is, and maybe you don't want to say so for strategic reasons, but are you worried that what's happening in Ukraine could
What's
lead to
happening
something
on
much
the
larger
Bitcoin
and much more
side
horrible?
here?
And how motivated
Bitcoin's
are
about to make a
you
new high.
just to call the U.S. government
what's
and say,
happening.
let's come to terms?
Так, послушайте, я же сказал.
I already said that we did not refuse to talk.
There's also a
We're
high
willing
here
to
that I need be
negotiate.
aware of.
It is the Western side,
Западные
and
страны.
Ukraine is obviously a satellite
Украине,
state of the
безусловно,
U.S. It is evident.
Ну, это
I
же
do not
очевидно.
want you
Я
to
не хочу,
take it
чтобы
as
это
if
звучало
I'm
как
looking for a strong word or an
ругательство
insult,
или оскорбление.
but we both understand what is happening.
Что происходит? Финансовая поддержка, сколько, 72 миллиарда?
The financial support, $72 billion was provided. Germany ranks second, then other European countries come.
Огромный поток идет.
Dozens of billions of US dollars are going
course,
to
yeah.
Ну,
Ukraine.
конечно, поэтому,
There's a huge
поэтому,
influx of
ну,
weapons.
скажите,
In this case, you should tell the current Ukrainian leadership to stop and come to negotiating table, rescind this absurd decree.
садитесь, переговаривайтесь.
We did
Мы
not
же не
refuse.
отказались.
Sure, but you already said it. I didn't think you meant it as an insult because you already said correctly, it's been reported that Ukraine was prevented from negotiating a peace settlement by the former British Prime Minister acting on behalf of the Biden administration. So, of course, they're a satellite. Big countries control small countries. That's not new. And that's why I asked about dealing directly with the Biden administration, which is making these decisions, not President Zelensky of Ukraine.
Но если администрация Зеленского на Украине отказалась от переговоров, я исхожу
Well,
maybe they are
if the
editing it.
Zelensky administration in Ukraine refused to negotiate,
Пусть теперь
I assume they did it under the instruction from
правильное
Washington.
решение. Пусть откажутся,
If Washington
найдут какой-то
believes it to be the
предлог,
wrong decision, let it abandon it. Let it find a delicate excuse so that no one is insulted. Let it come up with
Там
a way
принято
out.
решение. Пусть они от него отказываются.
It was not us who made this decision, it was them.
Всё.
So let them go
Они
back on
приняли
it.
неправильное решение.
That is
Теперь мы
it.
должны искать выход из этого неправильного решения.
However, they made the wrong decision, and now we have to look for a way out of the situation to correct their mistakes.
Совершили, пусть исправляют.
They did it, so let them correct it themselves. We support this.
So I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding what you're saying. I don't think that I am. I think you're saying you want a negotiated settlement
Oh, it ran
to
that
what's
high.
happening in Ukraine.
It just ran the high.
Правильно. Но мы
Right.
уже добились этого.
And we made it. We prepared a huge document in Istanbul that was initialed by the head of the
There she
Ukrainian
is.
delegation.
Сфотографирован
He
Are
had
you
fixed
hungry,
his signature
baby?
to some of the
Pigeon, just a bit,
provisions,
sweetie.
not to all of it.
Don't you worry,
He put his
sweetheart.
signature and then he himself said,
Всё,
"We were ready to sign it and the war would have been over long ago,
slight,
18 months
uh-huh.
ago."
И война бы уже давно
However,
закончилась.
Prime Minister Johnson came, talked us out of it, and we missed that chance. Well, you missed it, you made a mistake.
Упустили,
Let them
совершили
get
ошибку.
back to
Пусть
that,
вернутся к
that
этому.
is all.
Вот и
Why
всё.
do we have to bother ourselves and correct somebody else's mistakes? I know one can say it is our mistake. It was us who intensified the situation and decided to put an end to the war that started in 2014 in Donbass, as I have already said, by means of weapons. Let me get back to further in history. I already told you this. We were just discussing it. Let us go back to 1991, when we were promised that NATO would not expand, to 2008, when the doors to NATO opened to the declaration of state sovereignty of Ukraine, declaring Ukraine a neutral state. Let us go back to the fact that NATO and US military bases started to appear on the territory of Ukraine, creating threats to us. Let us go back to coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014. It is pointless though, isn't it? We may go back and forth endlessly, but they stopped negotiations. Is it a mistake? Yes. Correct it. We are ready. What else is needed?
Do you think it's too humiliating at this point for NATO to accept Russian control of what was 2 years ago Ukrainian territory?
Я же сказал.
I said let them think how
Only
to do
getting
it with
S&P
dignity.
here, I think.
There are options
It
if
looks
there is a will.
strong.
Варианты есть. Но если желание.
Up until now, there has been the uproar and screaming about inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield.
Стратегического поражения России, поражения.
Now they are apparently coming to realize that it is difficult to achieve, if possible at all. In my opinion, it is impossible by definition. It is never going to happen. It seems to me that now, those who are in power in the West have come to realize this as well.
I mean, these equal highs are going to get
If
cleaned
so,
up.
if the realization has
confident
set
about
in,
that.
they have to think what to do next. We are ready for this dialogue.
And we're
Would
still
you be willing to say, congratulations, NATO,
high,
you won, and
low,
just keep the situation where
higher
it is now?
high, higher low, higher high, higher low. So we're still
Знаете,
bullish.
это предмет переговоров.
You know, it is a subject matter for the negotiations.
green.
No one is willing to conduct, or, to put it more accurately,
Can we send now, Jazz? Can
they're
we send
willing,
now?
but do not know how to
Jazz
do
wants
it.
to send.
Не только вижу,
I know they want to. It is not just I see it, but I know they do want it. But they're struggling to understand how to do it. They have driven the situation to the point where we are at. It is not us who have done that. It is our partners, opponents who have done that. Well, now let them think how to reverse the situation.
Once this ends, I'm
We're
gonna go
not
feed my
against it.
kitty
It would be funny
leave
if
the
it were
trays.
not so sad.
for you guys.
Да, было бы смешно, если бы не было так грустно.
This endless mobilization in Ukraine, the hysteria, the domestic problems, sooner or later it
One
will
thing I did want to
result
look
in
for
agreement.
is we want to do a look for a measured move here.
You know, this probably sounds strange given the
So
current
let's
situation,
Все равно
try that.
договоримся. И
but the relations between the two peoples will be rebuilt anyway.
сегодняшней ситуации
Too
прозвучит.
big.
It will take a lot of time, but they will heal.
Here, we can just move this down. Just to, we
Потребуется
want to have a
время.
measured move. So
I'll give you very unusual
half
examples.
a 50%
Совсем
sounds good.
приведу необычный пример.
That's
There
a
is a
big one.
combat encounter on the
На поле воли
battlefield.
происходит.
Here's a specific example. Ukrainian soldiers got encircled. This is an example from real life.
Украинские
Yeah, so
Our
we still got 3 to
soldiers
1
were
here.
shouting to them, there is no
But it's pretty
chance,
conservative. It's only
surrender
a
yourselves,
0.5. It'll,
come
it should
out
go,
and
if
you
it
will be
breaks the
alive.
high, it should go
Наши
higher than
солдаты
that.
кричат.
Suddenly, the Ukrainian soldiers were screaming from
What
there
we might
in
actually do
Russian,
is take
perfect
partials
Russian,
there
saying,
and
Russians do not surrender, and all of them
И
perished.
не сдаются.
put this at 1.
They still identify themselves as Russian.
Они до сих пор русские не себя ощущают. В этом смысле то, что
What is
происходит,
happening is, to a certain extent, an element of a civil war.
и все думают,
Everyone in
что
the West thinks that the Russian people have been split by hostilities forever.
растащили
No,
одну
they
часть.
will be reunited.
Нет,
The unity is still there.
воссоединение произойдет. Оно никуда не идет.
Why are the Ukrainian authorities dismantling the Ukrainian Orthodox Church?
Русскую православную церковь.
because it brings together not only the territory, it brings together our souls. No one will be able to separate the soul. Shall we end here, or is there anything else?
No, I think that's great.
Спасибо.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Well,
Free speech is bigger than any one person or any one organization. Societies
there
are
it goes.
defined by what
So
they will
there you
not.
have it,
What we're
boys.
watching is the total inversion of virtue.
there you have it. Yeah, so there you have it. Really boring interview. Learned very little. You know, some tough questions, but they were not. Yeah, it's just not that good. Nothing really to write home about. No news, I would say, coming out of that that's worth kind of mentioning. You know, he pushed him on that journalist. I wouldn't say it was like a kid gloves interview. I would say he definitely asked questions. Yeah, just man, not that much. Underwhelming, to be honest. But not mad at Tucker. I don't know. I was expecting more from it. A little bit more from it. Expecting it to be just be more interesting, more engaging. I expected Putin to put on more of a show. I expected him to come off more likable, because doesn't he want to be likable? You know, like, doesn't he want some sympathy from the American people? He didn't come off likable. It just wasn't. Yeah, underwhelming. I guess that's all there is to say. All right, but let's see what else we got here. We're gonna keep watching this trade. Kitty videos. Face your biggest fear, win 800K. Why am I not signed in? The fuck? When did I get signed out? That's... No. Jesus. Why did I get signed out, man? That's annoying. Stupid. Okay. This stupid thing is still being stupid. I guess that shouldn't be a shock. Alright, let's take a look at this.
Welcome everybody. Yep,
Little
it's
crypto
a live
sniper
stream.
action.
That's right. We're in the studio. We're in studio talking to you. It's the market sniper, the crypto sniper today, and the reset sniper as well. So we're talking out about crypto hat, invisible hat. Yes, indeed. The Georgian hat will make a comeback, by the way. But anyway, in
we're
the
still
meantime,
looking for this load of holds.
we're going to talk to you about Bitcoin and what's
But
just
obviously if it
happened
doesn't, we have
over the
stop
course
loss.
of Sunday into Monday. Yes, we're going to be doing that. And further to which, we're going to take a look at the total. We're going to take a look at the Dixie, the dollar, and why there could be a little bit of sniffings that could just bring a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of headwind. And we're going to talk about, we're going to include gold as an anti-fiat. We're going to talk to you why there might be a dull period right now. It might be a dull period. Yes, I was showing and sharing outside of, on my Twitter, redux calls of big shorts in and around the 6K level down to 3.7, and then previously at secondary high where it made 14 and then came down to around 10 that we were saying it was going to make 6 again. But I'm not expecting that. I'm not expecting that. That was a little bit of cheeky bait. We're not calling a bear. Remember, we are in our personal assessment of the technicals, a bull market right now. And that means you're having staircasing events of move up leg, partial down leg, little bit of a sell-off, move up leg, staircasing, partial move, and a bit of a sell-off, etc., etc. And I just think you've had a good run up to this point. Now you'll say, but, not higher than the previous time. And for that, we're going to need to go to the charts. So here we go to the charts and have a little look at our Bitcoin action. Yep, so on Bitcoin, let's close the eyes, My eyes are mince pies. So daily, this is what's happened. And I'm going to just check structure-wise. Yeah, that's the right one. Let's go down to 4 hour on this. In fact, let's go macro. I'm going to remind everybody, we're back in the studio. Let's go macro. So we have said, and people get confused by messages because they get piecemeal some of the arguments. They hear us say one thing and then they hear us say another thing, and it can be quite confusing. So where are we standing? Macro. You see all these big scribble draws. I'm going to just turn all the noise off for a little bit. This was, by the way, our legacy 6K bear calls there and there. You actually ran 3.7 on that one, and you ran 3.2 there. So we had closes at 3.7. But that's not what we're talking about. We were sharing that on Crypto Twitter it is, sorry. But what we're talking about now is this post-bear market that we had down here that finished at around the 16K, which we got the perfect head and shoulder targets for to the downside. And since then, you are in a Dow theory type environment. A Dow theory. Let's draw. Let's take that last one off a little bit. Let's draw and show you a series of higher highs and higher lows. That's right.
Maybe.
So we're in and around something like this at the moment. You can see we're on the high end of a little bit of a channel move. So this is typical Dow theory of moving up. It's not the runaway bull that you want, the hare, the absolute bullet that is just screaming up. It is a little bit of market bullish build-up. So here's your sine wave in all of this, and it's going like this. And I would imagine that we could just come off a little bit and rest. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go all the way to the bottom end of that channel. Often, by the time you've drawn a channel, it ceases to be valid. So I don't overrate the value of channels unnecessarily, but it can still hold for a while longer. It can still hold for a while longer. So great to have you on the live stream, and I'm looking and checking exactly all who's checking in, where you're checking in from, what part of the world are you checking in from, and what are you thinking Bitcoin's going to do next? Well, we're saying that it's made a couple of key levels, as you can see recently, and we think it's just pushing a little bit higher maybe, but it could gas out for a little bit. And we're going to come into some of those challenges that are also being implied. So with this channel, this is all being done on the weekly time frame. You can see by that, what I'm referring to is you're a little bit on the high side. Let's drop it down to the daily. Now, first, I want to highlight, in this more recent up move that you've got here, get that in. It's been less blow off. You can see this got really skittish, really choppy, and then you had that big shooting star over there. So let's change color, do it in the blue, little boy pippy blue, and you can see you got that shooting star there. And then the minute you took out the low there, spill, next thing 38. That was after making our 47.5K. That's right, the number we gave you that said you're likely to fail in. That's right. Now I'm hearing other YouTube channels starting to reference 47.5K. There's a couple of people that are watching us and regurging some of the things we say on their ever more popular Bybit link
47.5 is a random level.
So we're very flattered by the imitators. So now you'll all hear about 47.5 on other crypto channels too. It's not the most logical number for most, but anyway. So what's going on here? You can see I had bigger candles for longer, and it's a little bit less skittish.
And that one,
it's been quite a steady move up. This is only really a little thing. It's a little thing. We need to go in there a little bit more detail, and we'll be dropping the time frame. Note how we come from the highs, and we drop it down by the big time frame to remind you where you're at. So let's just put that line back on. Yeah, we can take it off again. So let's take you into the time frame of
fine.
4 hours. And this was the setup trade that we spoke to you about. We gave you a little bit of financial mathematics of risk-reward trade. So, by the way, you have since seen, just to recap this, it's quite important this, you have just seen the combination of two patterns deliver a 1:9 risk-reward trade. Assuming you got in at the last moment, which is in and around, let's go to 2 hours even, in and around that level as indicated there. You can see 8.83, in and around if you got in at the very last moment, one over there. Now, actually, if you're getting a reward of
He didn't
9
get his
times
target yet.
essentially your
Close,
risk,
but he doesn't have it
surely
yet.
that should only work
I would
one
much
every
rather
9
just take the
times if this is
profits
an efficient
up here
random
than,
market.
Like, wait for the
But I
tiny
just gave you
little
this trade,
sliver
boom,
when you've already got
and
almost
told you
3 to
about it,
1.
and very first time, it's worked. Isn't that funny? Do you think the odds were 1 in 9? Do you think the odds represented a neutral market? In other words,
guess
are
a
you
9
a
to 1.
market efficiency guy? There's no value to technical analysis. More specifically, HVF method, because technical analysis has been corrupted by the indicator crew, by the program selling crowd, by the write a book and devise a new indicator crowd, and the fake TA and the lagging indicator bunch. They're just so corrupted. HVF method specifically suggested to you that you're going to have a better than a 1:9 probability
Can we
of
go up
outcome
now?
of getting a
Can we
9
go
times
up
your
now,
risk.
Jazz?
And in the very first one, maybe I'm
Jazzy, I
just
want
a
you to
very
pump the
lucky
market,
guy.
okay?
Is this a fluke? Are we
want
lucky?
you to
Let's have a
pump
look
the
at your comments.
market.
Give me your comment. Is that just plain lucky? You know,
Buy
I would
trillions,
have,
Jazz.
I should have
You have
pulled
trillions
8
to
duds,
spare, my
and then only
baby.
on the 9th one got this one, and I just happened to have, you know, been super lucky. I don't know. You tell me. You tell me. You tell me what you think. But this was first call, first done. It's kind of probably the outcomes not pointing to 1 in 9. You know, if the guys put it down in front of you and it happens. And that was 2 patterns. We were relying on 2 patterns working. However, as I highlighted last time, they both were conferring and confluencing and
I like that
suggesting the
jacket.
same
That one's
thing.
similar.
So actually you have footprints in the sand, God's handwriting on the wall. These are our
Checks with the
phrases
red. I've got
for
something like
technical
that
analysis and why
All right, are we ready
you're
to go
getting
now?
a little look into
Did
the
you
future
decide to
on a
pump it, Jazzy?
probability basis that
You
is
guys don't
far
know this, but
higher
Jasmine's
than
an
that which is
Illuminati
random.
crazy.
Random said to get 9 times
She
your
likes-
reward, you should have to
she
hit
controls the
9
markets.
shots so that you end up flat and neutral. That's a, you know, trying to get something 1 in 9 times. Think of the dartboard with all the thin lines, with 9 different colors and a blindfold on. How many times are you going to have
We
to
love
throw
her.
to
She's
get the
right here.
thin green sliver
She's
that's
right
next
here.
to the red and the yellow and all the
Sitting
others?
on the desk.
Well, you've just seen it 1 in 1. So maybe
All right, Jazzy,
there's
we're
only
doing it.
2 or
We're
3
doing it.
colors instead of 9 colors.
time?
Maybe they're quite fat bands and you get a
Is it
better feel of where you're
time?
throwing. This is the power of HVF method, the best form of all the most distilled value items of technical analysis,
Okay.
plus some bespoke
Slop
provided
as I was
by us,
concerned
the
it might be.
originators of the HVF method.
Any trades as far
added
as
therein
gambles?
to what adds value in real trading. Because it was given to you
Gun to my
before,
head,
we shared on Twitter
NQ8060.
as it
Yeah,
was
I've got
breaking,
NQ8060
and it's done
coming
everything
up
we've
too.
said. Now, it doesn't always work, especially at 1:9,
There we go, now we're
1:10
going, now we're
type
going.
ratios. So you'll get, even if you get 40% of them right, you are
So
a
I'm
winner.
gambling
Remember, it's
according to
not about
ICT,
being
which-
right, it's
yeah,
about
but I
making
mean, I
money
think-
and managing the risk.
think
so
it's
that
like-
on those events where
got-
you
got
are
the-
wrong,
the
you're only
tailwinds.
losing that single one
Plus
unit.
you've got the
So anyway,
reversal.
back to the technicals. We've got
Plus
a little
you've
bit
got
of a
time of
lecture and a
day.
preachy bit, but you'll forgive me that
Low
because
at
we are back in
9:30.
studio. There was your first, that was your
I think we're
head,
good.
and there was a long, flat right shoulder, not as deep, not as high momentum. Look at that wick there on that side. More flat, didn't run as low either. You can see the low there. So we talk about a shallower right shoulder. I think that's my right hand, lady's right hand, definitely, and I've transgendered recently, of course. So it's also the gent's right hand. As an ex-gent, I know that. But anyway, so this was also an upside HVF, which gave us a beautiful triggering event,
What
and it
is he
moved
saying?
promptly away. And this is what's called a low-stress trade, because it moves consistently fast away from your entry, which means it moves consistently fast away from that stop, which was over there at that point over there. So now done. You had your reaction. Where did
All
that
right.
reaction of a
I think
falling
it's- I
wedge
think it's
come
time.
from? You guessed it. the same
S&P
47 and a
is
half that we
leading,
told
but
you would be a
MQ
key
should play
level
catch up.
over there. Isn't that interesting?
always
Now others are
strong one.
talking about 47 and a half because they can't help but notice while watching our YouTube channels how accurate this tends to be. They don't explain where it
How high
came
is
from.
Bitcoin
They
gonna
don't
go?
know where it came from, but they're good at
think it
copying.
keeps going.
And that's what you
Where's
got.
that
You got your
high?
falling wedge, and this time you pushed higher. You almost made the
did I
target.
put-
On some
did I put it on the
exchanges you
wrong
actually
chart?
did,
Hold on.
but you definitely cleared it there. And that's a wick sale. And by the way, even though the candle now is trending up, so let's get a closer look. We're
Oh,
doing
no, it already-
we're doing fun
it already
things
broke
today
it, right?
with the charts, and I'm getting to share live stream with technicals. How many people will give you a live stream? How many
Yeah,
people will
it's
give you a
above
live
this
stream
right
with
now.
technicals and check your chats at the same time? You know why? It's difficult. You can't easily do it. You need
It's
clever
right
equipment.
there.
Although I hear YouTube is bringing something. Maybe there's some innovations coming. We are using a pearl. A beautiful pearl, a great piece of equipment so that we can share screens and
Let's see
technical.
what
Hello
it
from
does
New
here.
York, says Jewelry Affairs.
I
Some
do
people
kinda
getting
think any
anxious on
sell
XRP.
above
It's going to
this
be ugly,
high
ugly,
here
ugly,
is
ugly,
probably
ugly, and it's
good,
going to stay ugly, ugly, ugly until all of you have cried off and gone and given up
You
and
know, I
said
don't
we
sell
were
Bitcoin.
wrong. Just like silver, it's going to be
Yeah, I'll
that
trade
kind of a thing. And then I suspect it's going to be potentially very, very right. And then you'll watch it and bemoan and say, well, it never came. It never came. It will come. It is coming round the mountain when it comes.
Oh, I see.
And
So
we
he
will
did
see.
get his,
We are not yet in the blow-off stages,
did
as
get
you have
his-
realized,
got
of this
his
bull
take
market.
profit
And
at
that,
that
friends,
wick.
is good news. Why is it good news? It's good news because I've got a standing desk. Can you see this now?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, and I can sit down. Isn't that lovely?
sitting. Is he
It's good
sitting?
news
Or is he
because
standing? Is he standing?
in that
I'm standing.
environment, if it was in the blow-off, it would be the end of the bull market. It would be the end of the bull market coming to the end. So it goes steadily, staircasing. The violent phase is good and also potentially the beginning of the end. Now we've got a lot of work to do. We want to keep building and going on up. This is not a bear call video. It is just saying that you could get a bit of progress decay.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as
I'm
violent.
looking for
It's
that.
not
I'm
getting
looking for some
volatile
progress
just
decay.
yet. We could, of course, be wrong. It could go a little bit higher first and then turn at the 49. All these things can happen. But my suggestion is it's not the time to be putting on new leverage longs. And in actual fact, I've taken quite a lot of the gains that we've got. Beautiful gains, beautiful gains.
Yeah.
Who got beautiful
I was
gains?
doing
Anyone
some
trade
gains
this with us?
too.
Let's have a look at the live
Not on
stream.
my spot
Bill
Bitcoin,
from
but
North
my
New South
been looking
Wales,
for exits
Australia.
on
Good to see you, Bill.
GBTC
Thanks for
since
joining.
the announcement.
Who took some?
Because I don't really
Germany
want to be in that.
says.
One, I
where-
probably want to be
that
in the
moved
Fidelity
quickly.
one.
Hello
if
from Belgium,
anything.
Texas, Portugal, Hungary. Yes, it's great to see. Anybody take this trade, by the way? Not luck by you. You've
Okay,
been
so
giving
what I was
away
thinking
free
is I could
lectures
just
for
take
years.
this,
You're
right?
wrong sometimes, but right a lot. Correct. And we will continue to be wrong. And you will never get 100 out of 100. You'll have periods where you kind of had really good runs and you'll have dull ones. I am patient on XRP. This dog will have its day. Yes, indeed. Indeed. Greetings from Canada.
Just looking at some chess moves here.
Don't tell anyone.
I think we're pretty safe.
Malaysia's
on
in the
these
house.
chess
Good.
moves.
Okay, so
Wait,
everyone's coming in from the country, but any of you make some money? Any of you make some money, or you're a bit too afraid? Or maybe you're just investment and taking it slow. Okay, so that was good. But what could be coming? So what's the
What am I
slight
missing?
threat? And as I say, slight threat. It's not. We're not calling the end of the world. We're not calling back down to 6K or anything exciting, even though we were tricking you with some innocuous tweets about legacy periods when we had called in and around the 6K level. Let's take a look at the total market cap at the moment. So if we have a look at the total market cap, you'll remember we were concerned during this period when we came back to this very important level. You see in the dark blue, 1 trillion, 1T, 1 trillion market cap. And it was like, we need to get away from here or we're going to potentially fall through here. Whoops, sneeze coming on.
Oh, look at S&P. Dude, come on.
Excuse
Why
me.
can't
I
NASB?
I promise you I've
Oh,
scared
there it is,
somebody's
there it
cat
goes,
there.
there
I apologize
Let's
for that.
zoom out.
But it's,
So we
you know,
finally
it's the
have it.
travel.
All right, let's take this off. So
So
we
anyway,
can
you
see.
ended up with a bit of a inverted head and shoulders in there. So you've got shoulder, head, shoulder. And in the end, that turned out to be a reversal. Boom, you had to get back long, and we did. We were concerned. We were saying this could turn into a head and shoulders. That was marginally higher than that on Bitcoin, not on total, as you
Yeah.
can see. What's happened since total? If we take that as the naught on the fib,
So if you are going to
That's
take
the
a
low, and
lesson
you take-
from this, don't trade with too much leverage because you can't be worried about your stop getting hit. Stop getting hit means your trade was wrong. It doesn't mean you're wrecked. I can pay attention to this, mess with the kitty, go to the bathroom, whatever. Not worried about it.
The last point of high at the high. Note how
I do wish I was in
you
the
just
S&P.
ran, and there was a real flaw there at your 68,
I saw that
which
it was
also happened to be in
stronger.
and around the 1.5 trillion. You see that? We'd already drawn that line. Why? Because we've drawn the 1 trillion, the 1.5 trillion, and the 2 trillion, law of round numbers, key levels of significance, HVF method, and you put the Fibonacci on there from the high and all the way.
Let's go
down
feed kitty.
from
I'm
the-
going to be right back. We're back.
From the low, and next thing you find out is the 61.8 zone is around here, and you went up, grinding in a broadening structure on your total, and you
So,
collapse down. And
sideways
where did
day,
you hammer
pretty
out?
doo-doo.
There's a hammer in there, he says.
Not
There's a
what
hammer,
we really were
and
looking
you probably
for,
can see
but
it. You hammered out
as you
there
can see,
on a head that is stuck on the
we
61.8.
got their,
That's traditional
time of
technical analysis
day
before you and you bounce back up.
analysis
Yep, and you
to
had a
kick
little bit of a
in,
stall at our key
930
legacy
low.
targets there. See the two purple lines, a little bit of a
we
pullback,
also
and now you
got the
pushed up forward.
reversal
So,
pattern.
what did I say I hoped
Didn't get
would
the best
happen?
entry
I
on
said
it.
I
We were a little
hoped we don't
impatient.
run the previous high.
I'm being
And that we actually have a
honest.
little bit of... My best thing for me would be a little bit of an off,
However,
a calming, and then a setup
Hold on.
again. Nice low vol. And then we get something along the lines of this.
and by the way, when you're
setting up
looking for
us.
these,
And that will give us a...
tip for you guys, when you're looking for these low risk entries, because you don't want to try and buy this low. There's no point in trying to buy this absolute low. You're probably going to end up buying up here, then you take all the drawdown here. You could get stopped out before you even started, right? So you want to wait for it to bottom, break structure, and come back. But always when it does that, it's going to make a low before it runs the low. So you really want to look for that low and then a lower low. I was kind of looking, I saw here and then here. I thought we were good when we were coming back up, especially after we made that higher high, but it's not a higher high. This is the high. Anyway, this is why we don't watch. This is why we like set our stops and kind of ignore. It's bad for you to watch. You're going to get psyched out.
blast. I would say 1.8 is going to be an interesting trillion mark point because it's very close to that legacy high. And then you're looking at twos. Twos would be the next mark on the total. This is the total, by the way, that we're looking at. So that's why you're getting trillions here. Total. That has Bitcoin in
So
it
I
and
think
all of the others.
above
Okay,
here, we
good.
should take some
So that's a little bit
partials,
of
right?
total market cap. So a little bit of easing
Let's
would be
partial
great.
close.
By the way, in the bodies, you can see it's gone higher, but
No.
not at the wicks level. This was highly volatile, but this is moderately more steady. So what's going on the dollar? Many people need to understand the dollar plays a role
Trade,
in this. The
create
dollar
new
plays a role in
order.
this. The big fundamentals of Bitcoin
Sell.
comes on the dollar
Limit.
going down. Look at him coming forward and back. Yep, and we talked to you about
We'll do
the
like
first
1865.
monarch inverted head and shoulder. That's right, the king, the one that's first, that's inside all of the others. An insider of note. We talked about it. There he stands. That is your monarch inverted head
So
and
yeah,
shoulder.
we'll take a
There
little profit
you put
there.
it out. In fact, you had a final touch there. That would be armpit 1, and there was your armpit 2. That's it. 2, 2, 2. And that was your inverted head and shoulder.
Actually,
That generated a target
We're
there
gonna
for
take
the
it up
Dixie.
here above the high.
How did we do? How did we do with our guessing game? You know, the 1 in 9 guy. How did we do? We didn't do too bad. We didn't do too
Take it
bad.
right
It
before.
kind of made that target. But first, it hit another level that was really interesting. It
So
did
you
a
got pretty much a
continuation
nice
broadening
2 to 1, I
structure.
think,
Did
there.
that. It lay on the
1870,
103, a key
207.
level that we had already
be
drawn.
better than a
Key
2 to
round
1,
number.
right? It's like
All of the real rules. You
48.
guessed it. We kind of were there. And then
it's
it broke on up,
23.
took out the
A
high,
little better than 2 to
made
1.
it through
So we're good
our
on that.
already
Taking it right
potential
before the
next
high,
neckline
probably,
in
almost
part of
doesn't
our
run the high.
theory
That's why
of
we're having
nestled head and
50%
shoulders and
left
inverted
on.
head and shoulders that you too can learn with us and watch implemented daily as I give regular updates throughout the day to our community through the WhatsApp, through the beautiful app that is recently redesigned after great investment, our desktop front, and you can click the first link below
Right.
to go and find out more and have a friendly chat with someone about it and have it demonstrated for you. Ask your questions. Ask me a
can
question.
see the trade playing
yes,
out.
ask me the questions. You can ask questions in the chat, by the way.
Do
So,
anticipate
in a
keep
sense,
going. Probably
I'm going to
gonna
change color for this one. This
cut the
is a
YouTube video
potential
here. Not the
new
stream, but
inverted
just,
head and shoulder for the
you know,
dollar.
I think the interview.
I'm just
reactions
seeing
going
that
on YouTube
our
tomorrow.
Iranian friend, what's the name of
Even though
our
it was a
Iranian
nothing
friend, the big
burger.
podcaster, is getting, in
so we'll
conjunction
cut the
with
YouTube
Zero
video
Hedge, is
here
getting
soon.
Jim Rycards and Brent Johnson on and other people on for the future of the
Man,
dollar.
I wish that I was in
And
S&P
I
instead.
am waiting for the
But I
call,
think Nasdaq
and I'm
will
waiting
run.
my bottom
It's
lip
always,
a
it always ends
quiver.
up stronger in
But
the
the
end.
finest macro market technician on the futures markets of the currencies was not called to attend. Oh my goodness, how couldn't that be? Oh dear, my plight is the fact that we
Oh,
only
look
have
at ETH.
60,000
Look at
YouTube
Bitcoin.
followers. Not 1 million.
Oh, it's going
1
for the
million. Hit the
50,
like
dude.
button, pull the
Holy.
algo right now. Don't forget to subscribe. Send it to your
Holy.
friends. Get me on the show. Telling Zero Hedges what's going to happen to the dollar. I'll tell you, I have one of the best opinions out there. And I'll still potentially be wrong. So this larger structure is looking a little bit like a soft right shoulder again.
ETH, man.
It's
Holy.
looking a little bit like a soft
Holy,
right shoulder
dude.
over here. So this is where I'm pointing. After making our target, we said it would soften a bit, and this was the perfect gateway for Bitcoin to make its 48.6K target, which, as I've shown, it just did over the Sunday session. New week, new vibe, new data. He just said data. What data, you cry? What data speaketh the bald man about? And he goes, well, friends, fellow countrymen, and sound money advocates, the anti-proliferation,
Jesus,
fiat,
dude, look at
liberation, resistance force that you be with me. Yes, we are looking at the calendar today, and we see tomorrow being Tuesday. Tomorrow being Tuesday. It sounds about right if today's Monday. The 13th of February, one of the richest days for what number, you say? What number? CPIII lie. Ooh, naughty. How
I
dare
love
you.
this guy,
Well,
man.
you get stats, you get lies, damn lies, and statistics. And they can put anything they want out, as far as I'm concerned. But you will have out of the US of A, or some say the USSA, they're losing confidence, I hear. Core CPI, month on month. Expected 0.3. Yes. CPI month on month, that is not core. You're expecting 0.2. And CPI year on year,
Damn, man, this is like so crazy.
expecting
dude.
2.9%.
It's going for 50.
So here's my guess for tomorrow's CPII lie. Francis Hunt's guess is going to be that actually you're going to meet or beat a number of those three numbers, which is going to suggest more strength to the dollar. We can't cut so much. Hold on.
What happened
The
with
economy's
Dixie? We were
never
talking
been
about
so
Dixie,
strong.
right? We were
Like our
looking
non-farm
for-
payrolls number. That was
We were looking for it to come
unbelievable.
down in
You
here for a
Americans,
buy,
you're just
it
getting
didn't.
offered jobs all the
Got
time. You're
these
driving on the
highs,
way
now
to
we're
work
gonna
and you're
come
getting
down here
cold
for a buy.
call. You
But
say,
this is,
look, it looks like you're going to
15
work,
minute
but
reversal
you know, I
here.
got another job for you for 20%. More wages than you're earning. I guarantee you, we'll pay anything you want. Yeah, you know that economy that all you Americans are experiencing, where you're being pulled off the street and say, dude, come work for me, please, man, I'll pay you anything. Yeah, just any time.
Give it back
We
on the
can't
bathroom,
fill,
but
we
keep
can't
this
find
running,
the caliber
you
of
can
such
keep
men
this
as you,
on.
such people that are following this beautiful station. Yes, so my idea is the CPI lie is going to come in at or higher on those three measures, which means dollar up, dollar up, dollar up, dollar up. And if the dollar goes a little higher, my friends, you face a tailwind. You face a tailwind. This is my guess. It's a guess. It's a guess. I'm a guesser. I'm a professional guesser. I look at charts and I guess some. And that's why we get wrong. No one's been to the future and come back. I've certainly never claimed to myself. But I'm wondering, I am having a little wee wonder if that is not going to be the cut of the direction. And what happens if the dollar gets stronger? Brent Johnson will look like the man with his dollar milkshake, how the dollar gets stronger. He's probably partially right. A major surge in the dollar on the basis of the interest rate spike. The theory, the Francis Hunt theory of the interest rate spike based on debt default and the absence of bid for debt. The interest rates go higher. The leader on the hiking of rates, the dollar. The dollar has a spike, crushes the emerging markets. Yes. So our theory is not popular. It's not gaining traction. I haven't named it and branded it accordingly. I should do that. Maybe more people will pay attention. Anyway, I don't care about that really. It's just what will the market do next? So the possibility is a little bit more dollar strength could come. Big CPI data tomorrow. And the crypto kids that never pay any attention to this because they think he's just an old guy. He don't know nothing about that crypto market. He does. He knows that if the dollar goes up, it's a tailwind, or it's a headwind at least, for cryptos generally. So with that in mind, be careful out there. What saith gold? Yes, another chart that other crypto kids don't tend to look at too much. The anti-fiat king. Now here's the thing, says the anti-fiat king. He's concerned about gold. Initially, we were like, hey, this could be good. This could be good. Gold go up. Hey, this could be good. Goldilocks. Goldilocks economy, you know, like Mr. Greenspan. Oh dear. Mention Al, our local pal, the biggest creator of liquidity to ensure the destruction of the Western economy. That's right. That was his mandate, and he did a great old job.
Back.
This is how we were looking at it with a bias bull. Why? Because you came in up. However, with its current price behavior and its current structure, remember, when you get to breakouts that have been consolidating for a while, you are either right or you're 180 degrees wrong. It hasn't broken yet, but we're starting to ask the question, if indeed this was the big reaction that we got, and in actual fact, since then, new color, new framing, new draw, in fact, that the precious metals guys are going to feel more pain. They're so used to it. We're such masochists, you say, holding on for sound money. Now remember, they don't want you buying gold. They want you thinking it's a dud and a duffer. They don't want it up near all-time highs. So this is what could happen instead. Boom, bosh. That is what we call a slap in the face. Very hard down there. Third impulse, and then a little bit of a pop.
Yeah, I've got a little gold.
There's a little bit of a slip
I got
through.
some of this. I got some of this.
Your auntie? Are we actually going to break downside for gold? Down for
These
gold.
are daily
down
candles,
for gold.
dude. This is
I would say
such a
it's actually
bro.
pivoting that way more
If
now.
I had had
The
this money in
odds are
Bitcoin instead,
reversing away
I would've
from
gained like
the upside break on gold
30%
to the potential
probably at the same
downside.
time.
Anti-fiat God market. Who named it that? Yours truly. He named it that.
All right,
How many
we're
other
about to get our
people
first
on the
TP
crypto
hit
realm
here.
talk about the anti-fiat category, or even think that watching gold is even significant?
About to get our first
None of them.
profit hit.
None of them at all.
And-
But be warned, it is your anti-fiat God market, and
Yeah,
he
we
looks
got
sick.
quite a bit
and
already
silver
of,
permanently stayed sick.
profits.
He never even
So we
had
don't
the
even-
run with gold.
You know, we
He's
always
staying sick.
consider,
So we
like, do
didn't
we
kick
just
on
take it
with
off
gold
here?
going
'Cause-
leading first, and then
But-
the
but
silver starting to
NQ is
follow.
gonna make it
No,
high.
that didn't happen.
It's behind,
so what's
but it'll
happening?
do it.
Possibly a little bit of a sell. Back down. Now this is what happens. These overperform to the downside, and you are, wait for it, sitting all just above the 2K level. Wind up to break a level, works to the downside just like it works to the upside. Yep, that's right. That's what happens. I'm sorry, it works that way. There's a beautiful symmetry to technical analysis. What works to the upside works also to the downside in a similar way. And we are just above one of the most key round levels. Between 1 and 10,000 is the 2,000 mark. That's right. What say you all? What say you all to this? Is it good that gold looks so sick? Is it good that it is not setting up? These are warnings. I'm just talking. I'm just sharing. I'm trying to save you from pain. It's not good news. It's not good news. But hey, would you rather hear
True.
something before it happens, or the possibility, and maybe save yourself a little bit of downside?
I'm feeling
Just
like
saying,
this could
hoping
come back
you can see
on
the
me
value
before it
in
goes
something
higher.
that looks on the surface slightly
'Cause the
negative.
S&P did just
Dad
run
says
high,
Bitcoin
NQ
pumping
hasn't yet.
50K. Well, you see,
So it might
50K
come back
is kind of
down,
like
wind
gold
up.
2K. That's how
Might
it works
come all the
in
way
my
around
view.
here or
And we've been
something.
slapped down at 49 quite
Not
violently.
that I'm worried
We're
about
calling
it,
up more
just-
consistently. Now, I don't think Bitcoin's going to
wait.
necessarily
I would have loved to have had that
because
half
for
off.
some reason at the moment it's being preferred, slightly preferred. But if gold goes down and the dollar is going up, Bitcoin will be affected. That's right, friends. Bitcoin will be affected. So, what say ye? What asks you? They also don't want
Yeah, we
us
are gonna
buying
keep an eye on
privacy
the dollar.
coins, do they? Indeed.
'Cause
The
that
other
was-
aspect, which
oh.
absolutely has died. I
This is
remember I
where
was
we
at the,
come
yeah,
down,
I
I
was not an
think.
early guy. I was sort of 2015, 16 Bitcoin crypto guy. Not one of the 2010s or 11s or 12s or even 13s
Yeah, I was a
or
13.
14s even.
I wish I was
but
a
I
12.
remember there was so much talk
What a
about
difference,
privacy. It
dude,
was all
12.
about
What a
Monero got
difference,
mentioned
12 versus 13.
every fifth conversation.
Still,
Privacy
13
was
was
the
good.
thing. Privacy was
Got
the
in
thing.
as soon as I
fine
could,
people.
bro.
And we were going to be escaping the surveillance
I figured
state.
it out.
And now, no mention.
soon as I
Mr. Fink.
fucking
Mr.
learned
Fink of
about
Black
it. I
Rock.
heard
don't
about
hear
Bitcoin. I
him
thought it was
mentioning
on a TV show. I thought it was
deep
fake.
toil and
Thought it was
effort
from the
to
TV show, but it
ensure
was
privacy
a
for
TV
the
show about a
retail
real thing.
masses. Do you
good
feel
one.
him wanting that for you? Do you
Here
feel
we go. Here
his
we go. Here we
need
go.
to
Here we
bring
go.
you that
Here we go.
solution?
Here we
I'm
go.
not
Here we go.
feeling it
That
so much.
feel when it
Not
hits
at all.
your take profit.
Anyway, so that was the Dixie. You wanted to see it again. And
does
by the
feel
way,
good.
if it were to
feels
go to
good
the
to take
upside,
those
let's give you a
profits, bro.
target.
It feels
because
good to
this,
hit
if
that
it turns out to
market
be
sell.
that which I suggest it may, and by the way, it can
boom,
take a
man.
number of days, even a week
how
to play
many-
out
how-
this. Don't phone
8
in
points,
tomorrow and
so
say, it didn't
that's
go up to
something.
that
I mean,
number
it's like,
yet.
I'm already- I'm
Remember,
up
there's a bit of chop, there's
30
a little
points
bit of
here, so
churn.
it's like a
this
quarter.
is how it would look.
An extra quarter.
Let's make it a nice straight line like
20%.
that. Boom, chakalak.
25% on top.
And we're going to change it from red. That's a bit offensive. I'm a sensitive guy,
That'd be a lot. It'd be
especially
$600
post-operation there.
So
Anyway,
we
there
hold
we
that.
go.
We hold for that.
Up, up, up.
And then
Let me
we are
just
gonna
check something.
obviously hold for
We
it
want
higher
to do
as
that
well.
one more time.
Roll it up,
And
lace it,
we'll
pop up
clone
and
it away.
chase
There we
it,
go.
and
So
then
where
we'll
would
chase
this,
none
if
of
this
it, lace
performed,
it,
where would it go
lace
to?
it, don't
So
you
someone was
double
asking,
train
show
it.
us the Dixie chart again in the chat. I can see him. So if you were to, you would find yourself at 107.89 on the dollar.
I think after Bitcoin's about to run 50K.
up from 104.
Anyone would
at the
stop
moment,
at 50K right
and
now
that's
is
some way away.
so
Remember,
so
as
scared.
in the journey from
it's gonna
here
hit. They're gonna get stopped. No question about it.
to our beautifully
Probably run it
captured
deeper
target
even.
there, you can and still will have continuation patterns. This was a staircase with one flight up, one flight across, and one flight up. You can see it. And there was quite a lengthy consolidation before it broke to the upside. So with such a move that is far larger, 104 to 107.8, I would imagine 107 will prove interesting. You could even find 106 prove interesting, and even 105. And there could be pullbacks along the way. But overall, there'll be a drip, drip lean on Bitcoin, and he'll be swimming upstream. Oh, that rhymes. We're dropping the poetry as well. Okay, so that's old Bitcoin. What about ETH?
Here we
Let's have
go.
a look at Ethereum. Currently going up and looking rather sprightly, but a little bit of a higher time frame. Let's go up to the 12 hours. A little bit of a higher time frame says it's some way off its blow off high over there, more so
Oh, there
than
it is. There's
Bitcoin.
my profit. There
And
we
this
go.
structure,
All right.
this structure
So
over
locked
there, a
in
bit of a flat bottom and a broad
quite a
loop
bit
over
already.
there through
Locked
the
in
wicks.
like
That is an
16
ascending.
hundo.
Wait for it. Megaphone on an up leg, and whilst you're going up within that pattern, there's some concern. There's some concern on my behalf regarding the sustainability.
So
it will follow Bitcoin.
we
How's
took
dominance
some
gone?
profs.
This
We
has
took
been
some
a bit
profs.
of a Bitcoin show,
Happy with
by the way.
that.
It has been a bit of a
Fully in the green
Bitcoin
now.
dominance show. Let's go
You
right
didn't
up
get
to the
stopped
top.
out, but we can
And
also
check
move
on
this
the
up.
dominance
we don't really want
so
to
that you are not left
hold that
wondering.
far. We'll definitely
Back well above
certainly
the
below there
50%.
is
So
safe.
actually the alts
Um,
not really lighting
mean,
it up.
probably
Remember
we
we
could take
drew
a break
this,
even,
if
but
you're a regular viewer,
it
we
could come
drew
all the way
this
back to the order
sort of
block.
channel. It is above that channel. You can see once again, despite some meaty sell-offs, Bitcoin is
But yeah, we like to
rather
hold these to their
rude health.
conclusion.
That was a
I do
brutal
think,
sell-off, but
you know,
that
we,
was
I
a
have
very
a
nice
target
rounded bottom after
based
that.
on a
It suddenly
measured move
calmed
up
the hell
here.
out. That was post ETF. Nice little flag
What is it?
continuation,
What is
and up, up, up you go, just like you did there.
137.
So at the moment, dominance is strong, but this also tends to be a bit of a level where Bitcoin gets a little bit in trouble. there and there. So that wick at 55 and that wick at around 55 and a half. So
yeah,
this
so we're
seems to
we're
be an
getting a lot
interesting
more
zone.
profit
So A,
if it hits
Bitcoin
our
could
take
lose a bit of
profit
dominance,
here.
and B, it could
Maybe
go
what we
down and drag
do
some of crypto down, but maybe the alts,
is
some
we
of the
put
better
another
alts, not as much.
partial-
Let's go check total market cap. Looks like
Alright,
a
let's do it.
potential
Let's
bear
put in a
flag
second
on the
partial.
Dixie. Bear flag?
0.5.
I don't see that bear flag, but maybe I'll check again for you. So we want to have a look at the dominance we were looking at before we started hearing about Dixie, what we were going to show you. It's gone straight out of my mind. So back to the Dixie. Where's your bear flag? Where's your bear flag? He would be thinking of something like that. But there's not really enough to justify that. I'll try and make it happen.
Yeah,
Not
18015.
Or maybe a rising wedge. Not really. It's not an easy draw, that. It's working its way up. By the way, can I remind you, if we go to the bigger time frame on the dollar,
And
you
last
just
one we'll
broke
put
the
at
100 Dixie
139.
and you never went any lower. And we thought that
that's
could
already
be
there.
on. We thought you could
Okay.
go lower. There was that inverted structure, and it failed. It
All right,
reversed,
so
and it went
everything's
up.
locked in
We do
here.
need to check at the interest rates. Cover the Euro USD. Well, the Dixie is very close to the Euro USD.
All right.
It's just the chart inverted. I will take a walk past it just to fully satisfy you. But after breaking really
All
hard,
right.
it snapped up. So if we just clear all of this chart, what's actually starting to happen
We
is,
might actually throw down
despite
some
the
chess
sell-off
a bit
here
here.
of the dollar,
We might throw down on
that
some
was on the
chess.
rate cuts.
Feeling
You're now making
the
around at
chess.
bottom. So you made a lower low, a marginally
Watch this
lower low,
video. I don't know
failed
if I
to
care
make a
about
new
this
low,
anymore.
and now you're going high. The next thing will be a takeout
Yeah,
of
I
that.
think he's Miami catfish. Funny, dude. Freestyle vote challenge. Freestyle goat challenge. Interesting. Multiple monitors killing your game performance. This is
So you have a
me.
multi-monitor setup and you're noticing that you're having some performance drops on your main gaming monitor. Maybe it's a high refresh monitor, and you're wanting to figure out why it's performing under what you should be performing. Today I might have your solution. Let's talk about refresh rates and how you should be taking care of this so that you can have every bit of performance that your system gives you. Let's get into it. So to keep this really simple from the beginning, if you have mixed refresh rates and you don't run things exclusively in full screen, you're going to run into problems, especially when you have things that are graphically accelerated on both monitors at the same time. So let's talk about a few fixes and things that you can do to avoid this so that you can get the most performance out of your main monitor and not have to run it exclusively in full screen. So we're actually recording from my phone right now, and we're on a website called testufo.com/refresh rate. And what you're going to be able to see is that it's showing my refresh rate, which is a 144 hertz panel. And this second panel is just a 60 hertz panel, and it's nothing special. It's actually a 1600 by 900 panel. It's old, but these two panels don't play well together. If I pull up a video and I start playing a video on the other screen, you can see that it says stutter warning, browser stutter detected, and sometimes goes away. If I put this in full screen, you can see that it actually says major stuttering. And you'll notice that right here, the frame rate number starts to dip up and down depending on what's on the screen. You can see it's at 144 now.
Oh my
And
God,
it'll go up and
499.
down.
Here's the 50.
Major stuttering,
Here's the
137.
50.
This is what's actually impacting your gaming performance, is that your monitors are not communicating very well when it comes to your refresh rates as well as the frames. So here's one of the solutions. Make sure you go into your browser and you go into your settings, and you want to type in hardware acceleration and make sure that it is off. If it is on, then it is going to be using graphics to accelerate the other side and actually make this problem worse. Same thing for programs like Discord. Make sure you go to settings and advanced and turn off hardware acceleration here. And then even in OBS, in settings, you also have a setting under advanced that says enable browser source hardware acceleration. You're going to want to turn that off as well. And lastly, I should probably say, is make sure you disable your preview window. I know this seems like a problem, but when you do that, you'll see that all of this is going to sync up really well, and it's going to say that there's going to be ready, or the stuttering is going to be as minimal as possible. If you want to solve this problem without having to mess with not having anything on your second screens, then you're going to have monitors that match refresh rates so you don't have these problems. If you want to know more about streaming and technology, check out this playlist. If you want to know about a $40 capture card that blew me away, check out this video. And if you enjoyed this video, drop it with a like. Consider subscribing and join our Discord.
Yeah.
I'm Cyrus. Welcome to the
I
darkness.
don't know if I'm having
We'll catch
any
you next time.
problems with any of that. What's debiome? All right, let me take a look at something fun.
Yun Shang, his daughter, and the outlet's leadership are being drawn over how to run the business. People are upset. The LA Times took out a thing defending the Hamas, right? Mm-hmm. Saying what? That they weren't really raping people? What did they say there?
Yeah, they basically were saying that it wasn't as bad as it was.
I'll tell you right now, it's very interesting because who's worse, a woke Asian or a fat Asian? That's an interesting question. Or a fat woke Asian. A fat woke Asian might be the worst archetype of person on the planet. A very fat
woke Asian.
Woke Asian. They are, because you can't, because number one, you have reverence for them. Mm-hmm. You have reverence for a fat woke Asian. When I watch any fat woke Asian, woke whites, I go, out. I'll listen to some woke blacks, I will. But when a fat woke Asian comes out, there's something spiritual about them. And I listen. And it never makes much sense, but you still listen. But it's terrifying. Is his daughter fat?
No, she's normal.
Get a photo of her.
Your character.
Let's get a photo of this woman. I want to know who I hate and why.
I want to know who I hate and why.
Oh my God, she seems annoying.
She's got the Palestinian flag in her Twitter handle.
Listen, she's allowed to support the Palestine people. I don't care. The Asians are trying to pretend that like they've never colonized anything. That's not true. That's not true. It's this thing is like we're turning Native Americans into pussies. It's like they were warriors. They used to kill each other all the time, and that's why they're cool. Sorry, they used to kill each other all the time, and that's why they're cool. You can't make them into pussies. You can't. They were warriors, proud warriors. You cannot make them into pussies, okay? I will not listen to her because I want her to be fatter, and I want her to have a cherubic thing. I can't listen to her. There is no novelty in a thin woke Asian. Give me a fat woke Asian, and I will listen. Far left, fat Asian. And I'm in. I'm in. Always. You make them trans, I'll watch it for 2 hours. Because it's like a Pokemon. It's a fun Pokemon come to life. It's a fun Pokemon. That's kind of why people watch me. They're like, oh, he's like some Pokemon villain. These fat woke Asians are watching me. And they're going, you give me a fat white supremacist with sunglasses? I'll watch that. We're all curious. Everybody's curious about everybody else here. I have had so many friends that have been telling me about Morgan & Morgan and that they have had great experiences with them. They're the largest personal injury law firm in America. And my friends have been
so many friends
getting in car accidents and falling down the stairs.
Morgan,
you know, one of them went up the wrong. Comedy.com for all of your tickets and your needs. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube. We appreciate it.
So what
excited.
I think we're going to do here now
and we're having a lot of fun. And we are hopefully bringing things to light that you haven't. You know, and I mean, again, I'm not going to go to the Gilbert thing all the time. But to just pat myself on the back a little bit here, what I do, I mean...
Cut it and you'll just have to take a look later to see if it panned out.
I'm solving murders in my spare time.
I want to play some chess.
No, really, truly. People think I'm just like...
a scene for that, though.
Going out here and running my mouth, but the reality is I'm literally solving murders. I'm literally making the streets safer for the people of Arizona, a place I don't even particularly love. And I'm out there making things better.
Oh, Tim, what do you got against Arizona, buddy? What's wrong with Arizona, buddy?
Hear that? That's a pat on my back that I'm not getting from the governor of that state, Katie Hobbs. Maybe she's in a hair salon. That's where she should be. But no one is called. If I were her, I would call me. I should get a phone call. Mr. Dillon, please hold for the governor of Arizona. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do for the people of the litter box of my state. Thank you for the hot desert hell dirt. From the hell dirt, we thank you, Mr. Dillon, for everything you're doing. Because all these people are getting popped now. These kids and their families and drugs, they get popped. The family gets popped for drugs. You've known for 2 months. They already raided the house. Well, call me and tell me. I'll tell you how to get away with this. I'm for sale.
Hourly open macro
If
here.
these motherfuckers are that rich, call me. I'm for sale. I'll help you get away with it. Call me. I am the most underutilized resource in the media.
I'm going to get out of this.
I am for sale. I'm going the way of good now because that's my default. No one's offered. Nobody's sweetened the pot.
Let's let that stuff sit.
Nobody's sweetened the pot. You give me an Orange Theory, Jim. You franchise me in a couple of things. Let's talk. I'll have you all around me rehabilitate your asses. I will have your family on my show, and we will talk only about fitness. We'll rehabilitate the whole family, but it doesn't come cheap. Doesn't come cheap, okay? So if you're interested, back channel, and I will have all of you on, and we will talk about how great you all are and how you've been waylaid by these lies about you. But get the drugs out of the house, you fucking idiots. Are you guys really are goons down there. I grew up around great criminals. Really smart, conscientious criminals. My mother rented rooms to drug dealers for years, which made, number one, being a teenager, convenient. But they would live in my house, and my house got raided a few times. Like cops would come, and people, you know what people would do? They would remove the drugs. I mean, is it that fucking hard? God. Anyway, the boomers are going to be more dangerous than the goons. Watch.
All right. All right, I think we're doing it. We're gonna switch switch our
Ladies
scene
and
here.
gentlemen, welcome to the show. We are late, and we apologize for that because I was coming back from the Levity Live Comedy Club in the Palisades Mall. What a treat. And, you know, it's a dump. It's a fun dump, and the audiences were fun. The area is kind of a dud. And I was coming back, and I was on the FDR, and I hit a big pothole with my car, which is a luxury car, and I was up in Harlem when that happened. So I turned off the FDR Drive onto a street corner in Harlem, you know, with this brand new Bentley car, which the people in Harlem loved, to be honest. They were very complimentary about it. Everyone that was walking by was like, we love the car. What kind of car is this? This is very nice. And there were cops parked there who promptly left when I got there. They were like, let's see what happens, which I would have done too if I was a cop. I would have said, it's not going to be any fun if we sit here on the corner. Let's take a loop and then see. We couldn't get a tow truck till 4 a.m. And it was just me and my opener. And we were sitting in the Bentley, and we were on 145th Street. 142nd and 5th Avenue, and we were sitting there in the Bentley, and we would stand outside of it periodically from time to time, and people would walk over and talk to us, and some people would look at us, and some people would, you know, and then the one tow truck guy, we got a pizza at one point, and we're eating the pizza, and one tow truck guy came over, it was like a Dominican guy, and he's like, I can't tow it because it needs a flatbed. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense, you know. And he's like, you got to watch out for these Venezuelans. I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, the Venezuelan migrants. They're robbing everybody. They're just taking purses and.
All right,
what's
shall we
that?
do it? I'm
So,
gonna change my
you know,
sensitivity
again, that's
here.
not. I didn't
I've
say that.
decided
You know,
for,
that's a guy who's coming up to me, a Dominican guy at 1 a.m.
decided
in
for
Harlem, going, you got to watch out for the
chest, I need
Venezuelans.
the lower
And which just made me
sensitivity.
laugh.
All right.
I was like, where is
don't-
that guy on the news?
I'm not paying attention
But, you know,
to-
you never see like, where is his react? You know, you never see
What is
like
this?
the Dominican tow truck driver reaction to what's going on. But he went on and on. He was going on and on about Venezuelan migrants, gangs, and you know, I was like, oh, well, we'll do our best. We will do our best to avoid. But you know, we were sitting ducks. If anybody wanted the car, they would have taken it. Nobody did. We ended up getting it out of there. But that's why we're late. So it's not, and we weren't in. Maybe that's important. We weren't in the center of things. We're kind of off to the side. But you know, it's not that bad. Fox News. It's not that bad. A new Bentley sat on the corner on 142nd and 5th. It looked like a sting. I think if you wanted to steal a car, it looked like a sting. It was like me and this other white kid standing outside of the car like two undercover cops with this Bentley there, eating pizza, waiting to get jacked. So I think it was one of those things where like people were like, wait a minute, you know? I was like, this is a little too on the nose, maybe. But the cops kept, you know, like they would be like, you know, every like hour they'd be like, oh, you're still here. I'm like, what does that mean? I'm like, this isn't such a bad area. They were like, no, it's not good. But nothing happened. But what did happen was we did not get home until 5 a.m. And I was exhausted, and so I slept till like 1. And now, of course, I'll lose the car for a month. The thing about having these luxury cars, which is stupid, I've kind of learned my lesson about them. I think maybe the next things I get when this is a lease, when I turn it back in, I think I'll just not do this again, because anything that goes wrong with any of these cars is like the minimum a month, and you have to turn it in, and, you know, it's annoying. Now, obviously, it's not as annoying as other things that people go through, right? This is not, you know, I'm not, you know, people are going to be like, what about Gaza? I know, I'm aware. That seems worse, but it is annoying that you can't take this to a regular. They don't have a spare tire in the Bentley. There's none. There's no spare tire. You're just out there, like, and then you got to go through their people. You can't use AAA. You got to go through their whole thing, and You know, it's a very annoying process, but what is happening in Gaza is worse. Is that okay? Is that okay to say
right.
that the starvation, the mass
Liking the
starvation now,
position.
and
I think it's good.
you know, and of course, being in a tunnel, the people that have been in that tunnel for a long time, the hostages have been in that tunnel now. For how long have they been in that tunnel? Probably about 2 months since October, 3 months, 4 months?
Almost 4, yeah.
4 months in the Hamas tunnel. And a lot of them have died now. It's never going to work over there. I mean, this is just my surmise from the whole thing. It's just not going to work. And, you know, we're not going to talk about it because, you know, it's just not going to work. You know,
It's gonna
eventually
move.
you just, you know, you have to accept
Bro,
that
you're
it
gonna
isn't gonna
move.
work. You know, I remember I had an uncle and an aunt, and they, you know, it just didn't
What's that?
seem
Oh.
good. They would show up. They would show up to the, you know, the holiday
You're
parties at
moving.
different
Give me a
times. She
chance
would come
to
later and bring dessert.
mess
She
with
would
my
kind of
stream
not
at
come
least.
for the dinner. And he would come for the dinner, and she would kind of show up with like chocolate-covered strawberries, you know, 3 hours later. And we were like, oh, something's up. And something was up because they are now divorced, and they both live happy lives separately from each other. But this is what I think is happening
moved.
over there. Now, obviously, there was, in my uncle and aunt's case, there was certainly less violence. There is more violence over in the Middle East, from my perspective, with my uncle and my aunt. My uncle and aunt, they made a lot of faces. There was a lot of like scowls and kind of, you know, and that's not nothing, but it certainly wasn't kind of the, you know, the bombing of the hospitals and everybody dying. That's a little bit more.
That's
a little more
nice. We
depressing.
like this a lot.
You know,
We like
but,
this a lot.
Our president now, I think they're getting into the final stages of
Okay.
grief, and they got to get rid of this man. They cannot run him. They are going to lose if they run him. This is the scuttlebutt. I talked to a lot of people that certainly know more than I do, and
Okay.
they're all basically saying that this is not going to work. They cannot run a guy who is essentially in a stage of mental decline. We all know that. It's quite obvious to everyone. Trump also confuses things and makes missteps, but in nowhere near the level that Biden has publicly. And finally, the special counsel just released a report that they're not really indicting Biden for these documents that he had because he doesn't know where he is. They were basically like, he's this is a kindly old fellow who doesn't know where he is or what he's doing. He has a poor memory. There was a quote that basically said that alleviates his responsibility. It would have been better if he was indicted because people would have went, oh, okay, the old dog can still fight. At least he can still lie to us.
What?
And that's all we really want our politicians to be able to do is to be
What?
able to lie. That's the job requirement. That's the whole description of a
Yeah, we take
political
those.
figure. Primarily,
We
is
take
that they have
those.
the mental capacity to lie, to make things up, to manipulate. That's what
Is it gonna hit
a
my shop?
politician does, and he's too old to do that. He's too confused to do that. He's
Tim
too
doesn't like
forgetful.
Biden.
He
I can
doesn't really know what
understand.
happened.
He's old.
And
Not really there.
The money quote,
Alright,
I
so that
think,
was an
was,
interesting
he's
game.
an elderly man with a poor memory. The jury would be sensitive to an elderly man with a poor memory. The president did not remember when he was vice president. Even within several years, when his son Bo died, the memory appeared hazy when describing the Afghanistan debate that was once so
That
important to him.
looks like an easy free pawn.
So, I mean, this is the biggest, non-story because we know all of this. But, now the people are being forced to confront this. And now there's not that many people. I mean, you have Michelle Obama, who, half the country is convinced is a man. I don't know if that, hurts her. I imagine that it
Yeah, I
could
don't know
help
if
in
that hurts her
certain
either.
areas. And certain areas, it, might be a problem, but she's kind of it. Gavin Newsom is a hated charlatan who lives on a vineyard and manages a failed state from a vineyard that is trying to be, the plagues, the biblical plagues are descending upon California at a rate that only suggests that there is a God and that he is not impartial to the coast.
Looking pretty
He
good,
clearly
I
prefers
think.
the East Coast, which of course he would.
Yeah,
if
that-
there is a God, there's no way he likes the West Coast better. You know, there's no way. That would imagine he's like the most superficial being, and he just cares that it's pretty. You know, no, I'm sure he's interested in, the flora and the fauna, but he also likes the life, the people that he's created, and there's no way that he's not disappointed in the West Coast. There's just no way. And Gavin Newsom is a, hated figure. He's not liked. He's smarmy. There's all the things about him. He's a good-looking kind of 50-year-old fuckboy that nobody trusts and no one should. And he's presiding over a state. And when he had the chance to really wipe the floor with Ron DeSantis in the debate, he didn't.
Interesting.
He didn't. He kind of choked.
Interesting
And
moves.
DeSantis is not like a great debater. He's like a
I
cop.
don't really want to.
DeSantis is like a cop. Best case,
Give
he's
up
like a
that
principal.
pawn.
He's like
So
a
I guess we
substitute
don't?
math teacher who takes himself way too serious. We had a guy like that.
We're gonna
We had a
try that. I
substitute
don't know.
math teacher that
I
was
didn't really calculate
proud of
enough.
that he
But
was
it's
a
a
teacher.
short
and he
game. I'm
was a
down on
coach
time.
and,
So, oh my
he
god, I
wasn't a
fucking gave
full-time
up my
teacher, and
bishop.
it was like
Yeah, dumb.
doing extra around the school
Yeah,
to try to get
yeah,
hired
yeah.
full time, and he'd like call
That
you
pretty
out if
much-
you were wearing a hat in the hall.
That's what I
That's
deserve
kind
for
of
not
the vibe.
calculating.
So,
I said I
you
didn't
know, you could
calculate it, and I
easily
guess I
kind of
wasn't lying.
trounce Ron DeSantis, but Gavin Newsom didn't do it. So I don't think he's the move.
Huh.
And then you're looking at the rest of the field, and nobody has name recognition. That's the biggest problem. The biggest thing with the political system in America is you need name recognition.
Holy shit, this move though.
And
Oh, I can't-
Michelle
I can pull
Obama
the thing
has
back.
name recognition. She can
I
come
have
in,
to.
and if she comes in, I'm telling you, it's the only shot they have. It's the only shot they have is if Michelle Obama comes in and they do the whole kind of, because it is powerful.
He has three
right?
pieces on
The
that
idea
though.
of like black female president,
And it's a check. Oh my
identity
God,
politics
what the
is
fuck?
annoying and ultimately probably destructive. We know it's destructive, but it does have a certain visceral appeal, and it always has a certain visceral appeal. Even I catch myself. I'm not a human being. When I watch people and they're very emotional about, the fact that
Shit,
they are
I am
taking steps
lost.
that nobody in their
That was an L.
race has ever done before, even though that's not true. Like a lot of these people are like, no one has ever done that. And it's like, no, people have. Like, they erase,
man.
they erase a lot of people, right? It's like Martin was my favorite show growing up. It was a great black sitcom, right? I mean, The Cosby Show, Living Single, In Living
London
Color.
Peace
There were a lot of,
I said I didn't calculate it, and
But
I wasn't
sometimes
lying. I should have calculated.
people get up on stage, you're like,
I didn't
no
think- I
one
didn't
has
see that
been
this
here
queen was
before
attacking
me,
us
and I
stupid.
want to thank everyone who tried and failed. And it's like, it's an odd, you're like, wait, what? I want to thank everyone who tried to get here and failed because this country was always racist, but they couldn't deny me, of course. My talent couldn't be denied. The others, they tried, but they lacked something, but I had it, and now. But when you look at a lot of these people, the gay people that get up and do it, and they're like, I'm the first queer person to ever. And it's never true, by the way. All of these things are never true. And people get away with it, but they're never true.
Okay,
You
this
can
is a
always
better
find,
game.
and you don't have to look
I
that
don't know what I did
hard
last game. I was dumb.
to find people like Ray always brings up that one of the composers for the music of the Stanley Kubrick movies was like a trans woman who, is like this legendary composer of all this music that went in the Kubrick films. You don't have to look that hard to find somebody before you that also did a thing. There was a gay comedian. I don't know his name, and I'm not going to find it out. But there was a gay comedian who performed for the military all the
That was
time.
insane,
and it was
bro.
very difficult. And if somebody knows who this is, they can message me. His name. And he died, but he was a gay comedian that would perform often for the military, which is not obviously always going to be the easiest crowd for an openly gay comedian. And he died. But he did it, and he went out and he said, and he would win them over with material, and then in the middle of the set or towards the end or whatever, he would come out of the closet, and people wouldn't mind. It was but it was a little awkward because you're performing, and when he was performing, attitudes about gay people were more
right?
conservative than they are now.
Trade.
But
I'm up a piece.
he wasn't famous. This was not a famous person, but he was out there as an openly
Okay, I
gay
gotta play
comedian
faster.
doing what he did. So I've been lucky enough to get to a level, and I've probably even said there's probably not too many gay male comedians who've gotten to a level that I've gotten. There's a few of them. And I've been lucky, and that's the internet primarily, because the internet has, allowed people to get involved in people's careers. But
I don't like
the
that.
reality is
That's
you can never claim
not
you're not
smart.
the first of anything
let's go there.
in 2024.
Uh,
You're not it. You might be doing a great job, but you're probably not the first. That you just maybe got more famous than the other people, which is such an empty way to look at it. It doesn't mean you're better or you're more deserving. It just means that things worked out for you. But there's a lot of people that, so it's always interesting when these speeches go a little overboard. They run that line between narcissism and, because we get it. It is good to break new ground. But then it just
Okay,
gets
but now we
it
have this
always
move
gets
again.
a little uncomfortable towards the end.
this is
It's a
good
little
now.
uncomfortable towards the end of the
I've set
speech
my
when the
queen.
person's like,
My fucking
it's
queen. Are you
I
kidding me? Oh,
stand
but
on the
his rook.
shoulders of giants.
Oh, but then
to
my
be here
bishop.
tonight is
Jesus.
The only
The
person,
fuck was this move?
of my group to be here, the first non-binary Pacific Islander to be here with you tonight. And I look at those other people that were disgraced. Their lives were horrible, and they were spit on. Their whole lives, they
man,
just
two
opened their
pieces.
mouths,
But I'm up a
and
piece
people
already,
shit
so-
in their mouths. And when I got out of that limousine and I walked on that red carpet in my dress and I got taken, all these people were taking photos of me, it was never lost on me how horrible all those other people's lives were and how great it is for me, even though there's a lot more to do. And this is no indication that it's over, because it's not over. It's actually, in many ways, worse for me than those people. Somehow, even though I'm winning this, I don't want to. I'm not handing you over the thing. I'm telling you, it's still bad, and it's gonna be bad. But just as I was in my Valentino dress, I got out of, and I thought about all those people whose lives were terrible right before me. But there is a visceral, exciting thing about identity politics. Something fun about it. We all can get into it. We go, yeah, good for you. I'm happy. I'm happy when someone wins, right? So I think Michelle Obama
Oh my God.
is the only way, and it's gotta be big. It has to be big. It's gotta be Beyonce at the convention. It has to be
Remember
big.
that
You've
time?
gotta,
Shit, there's no way I
it's
lose this one.
gotta be that. You have to lean. You have to lean into it in a way that's, you got to ride the line between offensive. I mean, it's got to be Native American with the drums, kind of drum circles, and it's got to be African, like traditional African dance, because that is a nice dance. You don't see that a lot, like the traditional kind of African dance they
Okay.
do.
Really,
And
I
I'm
don't
telling
think
you,
there's
this
anything you can do
all
about
seems
it.
racist. None of it is, and that's what's interesting. What's interesting about
do
it
that, but
is that
it's
it all
just take
seems
and
right,
take.
and genuinely none of it is. And then I have to correct people all the time, because I'm
All right,
telling
and
her
we're
how
about to
win.
hit our take
Telling her
profit
how to win.
here.
And in order to win, I want to see Minnesota delegates, white, I mean gaunt white ghost people that emerged from their shit
Bro, what I play
snowy
here.
towns in the Northeast.
Okay.
And they come in the Great Lakes,
This move.
Finger Lakes
Yeah,
region.
go
They
here,
come
right?
out, and they are just kind of moving awkwardly at the convention to some great African drum beats. And you just see like the awkward swaying of a librarian from Minnesota. She's just awkwardly swaying, and they got to bring the Jews and the Muslims together. And we can only really do that at this point through kind of a beat, kind of a dance, kind of a musical, because it is going to be very awkward, right? Because I mean, you're going to have to What do? That's the biggest issue for the Democrats. Do they even bring it
Okay.
up? Do they even bring it up at the convention? They're going to maybe have to, but I'm telling you right now, it's got to be spectacle. They have to lean on spectacle. They don't have, the Jew-Muslim thing's going to be tough because they've got people of color. That's one of their big, demos. And then they have Jewish people. That's another big demo. Okay? And then they're going to have to get up and they're going to go, oh boy, how do we handle this? And the only way to handle it, the only way to skate past it is spectacle. The only way to skate past the border stuff is spectacle. The strength of this country is, they really just have to double down.
Man, S&P, look at it
on
go. Look at it go.
spectacle. And the only way to do that is kind of with Michelle Obama coming out with Barack, star power, star-studded. You bring everybody out. I mean, everybody is on that stage. Doja Cat, everyone. And you are just, and no one, because that's the only thing they're going to be able to, they're not going to be able to, like, logically, there's too many contradictions in their platform. There's too many groups in the room that hate each other. Too many people hate each other. And when too many people hate each other, you have to lean on spectacle.
So
Everybody, it's kind of got to be a concert. It has to be a coronation.
They're
It
kinda
can't
losing,
be
right?
like you're going through the platform. No. Not going to work. You cannot do a line
Fuck,
by line.
what is that
like,
move?
Let's decide the party. But that's got to be done behind closed doors in secret and silence. Silence. Tracy look
is
at
doo-doo is what it
Tracy Chapman has to do fast car. There can be no discussion of anything. You bring out Tracy Chapman, you got a fast car. It doesn't matter that Michelle Obama was raised rich, pretty much. Not rich, but middle class. Fine, she's fine. Michelle Obama can just
Okay,
talk
bro, what are you
about-
doing?
She should just
What's your plan,
do the
bro?
lyrics to Fast Car. If she got up there, get the lyrics to
I'm
Fast
up a
Car. If she got up
piece
there
now?
and just
Wait,
poetically,
hey, I could just take this out.
she was like, "You've got a fast car," and everyone's clapping. And I want a ticket to anywhere. Yeah. Maybe we can make a
There it
deal.
is. All right,
Maybe
we gotta take
together
profit hit.
we can
one
get
more,
somewhere.
One more
Yeah!
target, another 35
Starting
points
from
higher,
zero,
but
we got nothing to lose. Been working at the
Yeah, I
convenience
mean,
store.
big profits today.
There's a lot of people out here that managed to save just a little bit of money.
Big
Clap.
props,
Everyone's going
big
nuts.
props.
And we won't have
We
to
take
drive
those
too
props.
far. Just across the
Okay.
border and into the city. And then someone's going to yell, "Free Palestine." And that, you just have to keep going. And you have to ignore it. You have to, because that's going to happen at the convention. They're already planning.
Okay.
They're already planning that disruption.
This
They're going to
one,
go,
right?
"Free Palestine." And then if she's good,
If he
and
takes, I
she's
just take
good,
my king and I have
she'll
safety.
just point at them.
If
You
not,
and I
we're
can
trading.
both get jobs. Finally see what it means to be living. And everyone's clapping.
Okay.
And then she gets serious because my old man's got a problem. He's got a problem. He live in the bottle. That's the way it is. He said his body's too old for working, and everyone's nodding. The nodding, because she's a wise black
Okay,
woman. It's
I
what
don't
it
really
is. That's what it
know
is.
where my next
Whenever a
move is,
black
though.
woman talks, I listen because they
Shit,
know
I'm
more than
trying.
like a 17-year-old white piece of shit. So I always listen.
All right, I'm gonna,
They've been through more as
king
people
activity, right?
than
We go
like
for king
young
activity
white.
here?
I never. If you're not hot on Instagram and you're like a young white dude, if you're hot, I just watch it on mute. I don't care at all what you're saying. If you're a 20-year-old white dude and you're like, that's all I hear. But if a black woman, no matter what stage of her life, if she's homeless, I listen.
Oh my
A
God,
homeless
what
black
was
woman,
that?
who's like, I will turn and listen to her immediately because I just have more respect for their base of wood. They've been through more shit. So people in the audience are going to be enwrapped. There's going to be like they're going to. Is that a word? Enwrapped, enraptured. What am I looking for?
Dumb.
It doesn't matter. The point is, what am I saying? You know what I mean?
I don't know any
gonna
time.
and
Holy fuck.
and then Michelle's going to be at the convention, and she's going to be like, his body's too young to look like this, and everyone's going to start nodding. Now, here's the deal. There are maybe certain people in the
Shit.
convention will know it's the lyrics to Fast Car by Tracy Chapman, but it won't matter. She'll go, So Mama went off and left him. She wanted more from life than he could give. And I said, somebody's got to take care of it. And then and it's a big applause line. So I quit school, and that's what I did. I'm telling you, you have
No
to
way!
lay
Are you
down
kidding me,
spectacle
man?
At that convention.
What?
Biden has to be taken
I
out
played too slow.
like old Yeller. They
Watching my
you know?
shit too. Watching my trades.
Because Biden's
Dumb.
a racist criminal. He's an old racist
Very
criminal,
lucky
like
bitch.
many of our politicians.
What a
Biden
lucky
is
little
a
bitch.
he called the cities jungles. He's got shady deals in the Ukraine. He's got a crack-smoking son who's fucking hookers with guns to their head. You know, Biden has had it. You know, I mean, his like biography. I mean, it's just a. You know, Biden is.
Yeah,
the
we
senator
tricked him.
from,
He's gonna go for this
Delaware,
check, and he's
which is
he's
the
losing.
shadiest
He's gonna
state.
take this
It's where
first.
every
so we'll
credit
just-
card company moves to in America, just so they can fuck over financially illiterate people by calling them on the phone and saying we're
Bishop's
sending
also
credit cards to your house.
hanging. He's got
And they
everything
have
hanging
these
here.
exorbitant
No, he did that
activation fees
first.
and crazy interest, and the monthlies are insane. And they moved to Delaware because there's very little regulation and they can fuck over everyone. Joe Biden's the senator
The Queen's attacked.
from that state. That state, okay? He's a shady guy. And he's been one. He's been a
And then this pawn's
lifelong
attacked. So
politician.
he thinks he's
stayed
got
in there
something here, but he
forever,
doesn't realize
okay?
that move was
Al Franken
planned.
got
That was in the
bounced 'cause
book.
He did like a fake
That's
little-
some home
he's like, "Oh,
cooking
look at
right
me, I'm
there,
pretending
buddy.
to
That's
grow
some
tits."
home cooking
He's
right
out.
there, buddy.
Biden has been around forever. It gives
You want to
an
take a rook
idea
and I'll
of
take
what
a rook?
he's
And you
into, or who
Knight
he's
is trapped? Is that what
in
you want,
with,
buddy?
that
Oh, you
he's
want to
been
take a
there
rook and I take a rook,
forever.
buddy? Is that what
He's
you
a
want,
shady
buddy?
guy. He's just a shady guy.
All right,
There's no way
we can
around it.
take
He's an old
those.
racist criminal.
How about
That they have to
We
put him out
trade
to pasture
queens
nicely, like
now.
old Yeller. And there's something beautiful about putting him out to pasture and then having Michelle Obama come in a real
this knight,
real
though? His knight. We
electric
got two moves and the
way
knight's
that
gone.
leans heavily on symbolism, imagery,
I don't want him doing that.
spectacle, fun, and that would be the Democrats' only shot. Make it throw a party. You have to
Your
throw
knight, though,
a
bucko.
party right now for the next
Yeah,
6
still your
months
knight, though.
to get someone to it has to be because Donald Trump is throwing a party. He's throwing a party. You may not like the party.
This
You
guy
may
is
think the party
desperado, but
is not good for the country.
nope,
You
nope,
may think the people
nope.
at the party have had too
You
much
fell
to drink.
into some
You may
home
think some of them
cooking, and now
aren't
you're going to be down
mentally
2 pieces.
Well,
A rook
you
and
might
a
think some of them are
knight.
violent.
That is so
You might
bad.
look around the party and go,
I'm just
"Some
gonna
of
pass.
these people, that
This
seems like
knight
a real
can't go
powder
anywhere.
keg." And it might be, but it's a party. It is a party. There's
Oh.
helicopter rides. There's festivals. There's comedy acts. He's out there on the stump, roasting people, making you laugh. He's throwing a party for
Okay,
his
well, I
people. That's all we have left in this country right now, by the way. Don't kid yourself. Is a part. People just want to go to the party. We know we're kind of at the end. Not to belabor a
I mean,
point.
there's just no
Not to keep
moves
going
for you,
back to
buddy.
the same theme, but we know
I'm not going to lose on time this
that
time either.
we're entering a period of turmoil, okay? In many different ways. California houses are just falling off the hill into
Okay,
the
so
street.
he's just down a whole rook.
It's a period
Oh, it's
of
not. It's only an
intense
exchange?
difficulty. China,
What?
Russia, North
I
Korea.
thought I had a lot
All
more.
of these countries are enemies of us.
Oh, that was good.
We have
okay, but his knight's
problems
still trapped.
everywhere you
his
look.
knight's still trapped,
Some of it's unavoidable. Some of it can maybe be fixed. But we know
potentially.
all of the things coming down the pike, AI, automation,
Okay.
climate, it's not
gotta
going to be
play.
easy. It won't be easy. We
wanna
know.
extract
We
your
just
knight?
want to go to a party.
That's
You
fine.
have to throw a party. The Biden candidacy is not a party. The only person in the Biden group is Hunter, and he's partied too much. It's like we all have that friend where it's like, this is too much. Hey, this is too much. Like, that's not a fun party. Hunter's overdid it. He overdid it. And the Biden candidacy isn't fun. Here's what the Biden candidacy is. Trump's party is a party maybe in a big desert mansion in Arizona. Can we say that? And everybody's out in the backyard. Everybody's
Jesus,
getting
how
fucked
do
up.
I win this?
It's
Okay, I just
crazy.
push
It's
the
a
pawn?
turquoise-colored pool. The desert lights are out. Everybody's just really fucked up. The party is the
I
point.
think we just push the
Party
pawn here.
is the point, right? Biden's party is like you go to this rich kid's house and he keeps telling you about all the things that are going to happen at the party and none of it really happens. And you're like, is this guy confused? Is this guy lying to us? Is this even real?
Where's he going with
And it
these
never gets off the
tricky
ground.
notes?
It never, it just kind of sits there and it's kind of a dud. But the Trump party, the party is the point. Everything all the experiences you're going to have, you're having. You're having. That's kind of the fun of the Trump candidacy. Yes, he promises things that may or may not happen, but they're never the point. They're never the actual point. You know, it's the point. He's like, oh, these girls said, the Central High School, well, the girls said they're coming and give me your phone. Let's text. What was her name? Tracy, Tina, who is that? Ooh, she was a hottie, and she's coming, and she said she was coming. Like, it's at the party. You get to the Trump party, and he's like, isn't this the best party in the world? And everybody's clapping.
What?
Well, I guess it is.
Dude, I'm pre-moving.
It seems like the best party in the world.
Ridiculous.
Fucked up.
Whatever,
And
man.
yes, at the Trump party, a few people die.
All right.
A few people die.
I'm closing.
And then, he eulogizes
Good
them.
trade today.
He goes, they died. They were at the party.